chops at the Legion. Picture's been crooked for so long, why don't you figure? Yeah, okay. Anything you say.
Did Donnie ever confirm with you if he was?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes, yes.
So the regular meeting's when? The next regular meeting?
The 26th.
26th, February 26th. Just gonna pay for my water bill. That was nice yesterday, huh? With Marty and everybody?
Oh, yeah.
It's too bad the Cats lost.
Yeah, well,
I know. They didn't play well at all.
life sucks, you know, the other team played better,
Yeah, they did.
basically. Yeah, you got that?
What?
Hey, boy, actually, you ever, that motion from Tom Barry?
Did
It's
you
in.
wanna? Yeah, I put the motion on
It's in.
Sunday reason.
Oh, we're
No.
still fighting?
The old one, that you said you found.
Dan,
Oh, yeah, do you want it, I'll bring it, I have it in my office, I didn't
disregard for
file
open
it.
mic
I'll go bring
while
it up.
near
Yeah.
as far
Okay.
from ridiculous
I'll let you know when we get
allegations
off.
that being said, it's pretty clear
sorry.
in your response that you during the, wow.
Wednesday, Thursday, and I still had like a migraine quality left on Friday. I couldn't even eat, I was like, puke.
You're probably watching his post on Facebook.
No, once in a while I get, no. Once in a while I get.
Give me a migraine.
No, I get them sometimes. My grandma
Oh, you
had them,
know
my
that.
mom had them. It's the worst, I can't even.
I think you got it off that year.
That's cute, that's a cute picture.
I don't even wanna know. Yeah, but I mean, they asked me, tell me if you get well, tell me if there's my kids. I don't know what they did, but I don't know. Oh, yeah, but I was all over.
No, that was all, they thought that was all.
Yeah.
What about my side of that? That's what they just saw. Sorry? We'll see how it goes from here.
Yeah, at least they didn't get a ball. Stay out of it.
No, Jimmy, Jimmy called me, a few days ago, but they had already, locked my account. They said, well, yes, I couldn't even,
Did they do that?
You gonna help me tonight?
I'm gonna say, hey, Joanne, do it this way. Joanne, do it that way. Listen, you guys all right with John Leone? No, that's not right, Joanne.
Yeah, fine.
You all right with John Leone? He's a good kid.
I had him in school.
Yeah, he's really, he does have a lot of kids.
He's a really good kid, yeah. He was a great athlete in
He's got
school.
like six. He's got like 6 boys and 5 girls.
He does?
Yeah,
I had him in
all the
school.
way up from,
Who was
Little-
he? I think he was he friends with Reinstein? Billy Reinstein and,
he might be in that age group.
yeah, I think it was Billy Reinstein, John Leone, a couple of other ones. I got my heat up. I'm president tonight.
Yeah, she said, she got the flu?
He's got the flu.
Yeah, big time.
I said, Jess, the only reason why I ran for vice president is because I knew you would never be absent.
Hey, just stick with it.
Yeah, I
You're
know.
supposed to be with this, yeah, public works. Oh, you're public works, you're first? Yeah.
1:30. I don't know if you're with that band, but I got some pictures and I gave you a thing on plastic shopping bags.
Are you ever gonna resubmit that thing on the party site?
Yes,
Good, okay.
yes. I think
I
Jesse,
know you. Yeah,
Say,
I'm-
you got everything under control?
it's
I'm
just
gonna go for
the whole
disgusting.
city.
It's disgusting.
Counselor,
Hey, how you doing?
nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Counselor,
Let's see.
What's going on?
nothing, just wanted to come over and say hello.
Oh, that's nice.
I got him talking on the 311 tonight.
Oh,
So
the
hopefully
311 is,
See that? Hey, I don't need me at all.
oh, no, but they're a little backlogged with the potholes, but, other than that, everything that I asked for, they've gotten done.
Are we supposed to get an email when it's completed?
And what's completed?
What is it, 311?
It's completed.
Pardon? No, if I put a
Oh,
request in.
yes. when a task is completed, if your email is in there correctly,
Yeah,
then when
I
something
get,
is done, you should get notification.
yeah, I get them.
Do you have some items out there that you want me to look up for you?
Buckles, just.
No, I mean, they've told me that it's completed, but I never
It just
get,
says Shaggy's.
Al,
You
Yeah,
should
what do
get.
you got left for
I
for
should get
money?
an email?
You should get.
Yeah, you should get an email.
So,
I get,
you may not be set up, maybe you're set up so that you don't get emails, in which case we can fix it.
Oh, yeah, fix that, but
it's gotta be in your revere.org.
You open it up, I'll
with
see if I can
my,
fix it right now.
Revere?
The Revere 311. You have the three of us.
I don't have, how do you do Revere?
Oh, so you've been doing it from the website.
I've been doing it from the website.
So when you go on the website.
I do it on the phone.
On the phone. There's an easier way.
Now, how do you do it?
So go to your app store. You know, this is not an iPhone. This is a Android.
Go to my iPhone.
Okay, so you know where the app store is on your phone?
I do see get the apps on my, my Mac.
No? Mac like me.
I'm learning, boy, it's different,
So do this. Go this way.
yeah?
And type into the search text.
What's
here?
Yeah.
Right there. Type in app. There you go. Then open the app store. And then hit the search button at the bottom there, bottom right. And type in here, Revere 311.
Be it 311?
No space.
No space?
There it is. Now it's going to ask you for your words. You want to hit get. I don't know if you know your Apple. This may be the problem. You have to get your Apple password to install it, probably. So it's not going to cost you anything. It's free.
No.
Would you like to use your Touch ID? Oh yes. Okay.
I write it down.
I think this is just the passcode for your phone. I think that's all. It just wants your phone password.
Enter password to enable touch ID.
You know when you first open the phone each time, you
Oh,
put in a
okay.
password? Okay, now is it wants your, yeah, you need that password. I'm gonna step away so I don't see it.
That's the ID. What's with the mail system?
It's still up for repair.
They take all box out?
No, just the unit that had it there. Send it to the Sennheiser for repair. And in the meantime, try to get a quote. Some like working here. I think the engineer's taking a look at it. That probably is, or the quote's gonna include outlets. Yeah.
Oh, somewhere in here.
Yeah, well, no, it will be one for each station. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. Is that a definite?
Yes,
How about 8:15?
Nice to see you.
so that is on Wednesday.
Okay. 8:15 for Wednesday.
So I guess we don't have mics.
And we don't have Jessica, and we don't have Dan.
Gee,
Just had the blue.
8:15, Johnny Goodwin, Toretto's.
Oh, it's not working. I'll do it, oh, I know what it is. Here.
Here, everything's good. The only thing I hear is the roads, everybody's complaining about the roads, that's about it. Everybody's pretty happy.
I'm not getting too many.
Yeah, no, everybody's complaining in Beechmont about the roads.
It
Beechmont.
should work.
You working?
Yeah?
No. Yeah, looks like they just open it.
Oh, didn't want to do mine, so?
Sure. You're gonna know, you know your password for doing this.
I do know, I know.
So you
my-
wanna say, you wanna send you notifications, say yes.
Allow.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And what does that want? You want it to recognize your location. You could do that one too if you want.
Well,
Right. And so now when you report a concern, well, so the first thing you wanna do is you wanna get the count. So you wanna, so So do you already have an account that you've created
I don't think so. Should I just use my
So-
email from here?
Yes, so you want to create a new account. I need a new account. And just create, this and, with your email from here. And once you do that, then all the requests, when you put it in from your phone, you will get notified every single time
I
something's
think I already have it. I did, not 311 now. What was the other one?
Hugo. Remember
No.
here on one?
What's the
There
update
was,
of the city
what
agenda?
was before 311?
See Click Fix.
See Click Fix.
Yeah, so that's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're in the App Store. You're gonna get the bunch of passwords here, but.
I know all my passwords.
Okay, so type in Revere 311, no spaces.
Oh, shit. I don't usually swear.
Does he know about
You
his?
don't swear? No?
I do. Okay.
Here's an press it. Click get. It's gonna ask for a couple passwords probably.
I only got the password that I have.
Install. It's gonna ask you Apple ID password.
Apple ID. Oh, jeez, I don't know.
Should I'm gonna either sit down because it looks like you're about to start.
Okay,
I can continue to help you.
okay. I don't know my Apple ID.
Okay, when you find it, I'll be nice to thank you.
Are you right here?
Am I
I play well.
wouldn't take it.
Hi, my colleagues.
What's up? We don't have,
Nothing, good.
what's going on with the mic?
Morbido's not here.
We're never gonna have microphones again, or what's the story?
I don't know.
It's out, the controller unit is what had shorted out, and it's out for repair at Sennheiser.
Any idea when you'll come back?
I've been emailing them on a daily basis, and I have no response, but I paid for shipping, so hopefully it repairs this month. Is that $800 to fix it?
Now,
Charlie, you ready, Charlie?
you gotta be heard.
No, you won't be hurt. You are hurt.
We are heard?
Yes, these are live.
Just remember that they're all.
Oh, there. Are you ready on the right? Ready on the left? Ready on the firing line?
Oh, boy, Donnie's here.
Charlie, I thought you were sick.
Are you ready to start? I'll let Rick know. I'll let Rick know that you're ready.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ira Novoselsky. I'm chairman of the Subcommittee on Public Works for the Revere City Council. Today is February 5th, 2018, and I'd ask everybody to please rise and salute the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to remind everybody, let them know that since the last meeting, our PA system is still out of commission, so anybody that's speaking, to speak up so everybody can hear you. And our councilors have temporary microphones for the TV, so we can use those and move those around as needed. So today on the Public Works, our members are Council McKenna, Council Morbido, Council Powers, and Council Rizzo, and myself. I'd like to thank Council Guanasso for attending, and Council Patch. Today, we're going to talk about 4 items. We have an hour to discuss this. There's another meeting following this, so I'd like to try and keep each item around 15 minutes or so. So we're going to, the items I listed on the agenda were snow removal, outstanding sign requests, status of new DPW equipment, and our 311 services. So I'd like to call on our Superintendent of Public Works. You don't push it, just talk. It's not like the other one.
Thank you, Mr. President. Don Goodwin, Superintendent of Public Works.
I know we've had 4 or 5 snowstorms and ice storms over the past several months, and I know I myself, down in my ward, you know, I have had some issues. I think the biggest issue was on the biggest storm, when we called a snow emergency ban, and it wasn't enforced. So I know it was called on, and no towing was done, and the people in my neighborhoods moved their cars so the plows can still do their work, which was the total intent. Now, I don't know why, and it was asked why, you know, the plows didn't go up to the curbing. I don't know, Mr. Superintendent, if you can.
Well, I can tell you, obviously, the only problem we had getting back to the curb line was on the big storm. I don't know about the towing. I do know the police were out there, you know, doing their job that day, but that day, that storm just happened to take place during the height of traffic in the morning, afternoon. There was a lot of activity out there in the streets, and subsequently, but I think what it really all comes down to is the city really needs to have a comprehensive snow removal plan and a parking ban of some sorts, because kind of what happens, say like on Thornton Street, you know, we tend to kind of push the snow to that, because that's where the room is, because there's no parking on that side. Then the people who are out there during the course of the day, they're trying to dig their cars out at all, it's on the other side. So there are areas in the city, I think, that we definitely need to have a total parking ban or no parking at all. I know that's kind of hard for some of you people to swallow up here, because you represent your constituencies, but, you know, the town of Winthrop does that, and that does have an adverse effect on Council McKenna's area, because some of those people take their cars from Winthrop and they park them in the available streets in Revere, and they leave them there until the storms are over, which creates problems. The town of Lynn, there's absolutely, and they're as dense or denser than we are, there's absolutely no parking on the streets when there's a snowstorm. Like I said, it's only the bigger storms that have this real problem that we do have, but it was tough. I mean, you know, and the other thing is, you know, ISD is getting me involved. The mayor, myself, the gentleman from 311 sat down with the mayor and discussed, you know, what the shortcomings were that storm, and we're, you know, looking at ISD to go out there and, you know, write some tickets. They haven't done that in the past, and you know, if we don't learn by our mistakes, we're not going to learn. So I think the key to this is, especially with the bigger storms, but the problem with that is that you need to, if you have a snow emergency program, it needs to be in effect whether you get 3 inches of snow or 3 feet of snow. And that's just the way it has to go. The other issues that we're having is that, especially in the Beachmont area, is that a lot of those streets need to be made permanently one-way, so that we don't have all this conflict with cars, especially when that gate is closed. The floodgate on Winthrop Parkway is closed. You have cars coming up these narrow streets, and they come head-to-head. There's nowhere to go. We back up traffic. Council McKenna was out there with the snowplow people. She saw it firsthand what goes on. Ordinarily, a street that might take you 20 minutes to clear was taking over an hour. And these are some of the problems we ran up against because of the traffic and the people out in working in the storm, kind of against us, actually. So it was one of the most difficult storms I've dealt with.
Councilor
I
Knowles.
know, hang on 1 second.
Go ahead.
Counselor. I know back in 2015, when we had all that 109 inches of snow, we started saying, we need to do a plan, and here it is, 2018.
I agree.
And we're still in the same position we were before. So I think that the Traffic Commission, you know, whether they do it all as a full body to start, or just a subcommittee to start, and then bring it to the full body and come up with a plan for us, and even a couple of the councilors, I'm sure, would be glad to be involved in it, but I agree, we need that full plan. So, Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I put in as a motion is to put a digital sign down on Beachmont Corner when we have snowstorms like that, because what would happen was people were cutting through to go to Winthrop, and they didn't know the road was closed, so when they were trying to get back up the hill, they got stuck, We had to get all those tow trucks down there. So that was, that's one solution. The second solution is that in March, I am going to have a forum for Brad Street, Crest, Endicott, and a couple of, maybe Pearl Ave, to see if we can get some one-ways there. We're going to want to see what the people say. So that's going to happen too. So that might help you relieve some of those problems with the snowplow. But one of the things I noticed when I was on the snowplow is that Jimmy Mercurio couldn't get up the hill because all these cars were stuck. So we couldn't get up Summer Street to go up to Brad Street Ave. And that wasn't done, none of the plows could get up there because all the roadways, Endicott was blocked, Summers was blocked because of all these people that were trying to get through, to get home to East Boston, because Bennington Street was flooded too. So it was a mess. It was a mess. But anyways, so that's what we got planned.
Councilman Nassau?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me like during the last year, during my re-election year, the city took upon itself to look at these parking restrictions and one-sided parking and stuff, and they started enforcing it. Lo and behold, after the election, and the new election is coming upon us, that's been laxed. And I think what I'm saying is, the crux of this whole thing is, if we had proper parking restrictions all the time, it would be so much easier to put in place a game plan for snowstorm emergencies. It seems like we were starting to make a move on it, and now, I don't know what's happened. Lowell Street, for instance, I'm just using this because I travel it every day. They're parking on both sides now. Some good law-abiding resident are abiding by the signage, some aren't. Then we go to Fairfield Street and we make concessions for one street because of a couple of people, who are very, very nice people, by the way. But all due respect, the rest of us are all in the same ballgame here. So again, allowing parking on both sides of the street is an infringement upon proper plowing.
No question about it.
And I noticed that all of these individuals that complained to me during these past snowstorms that we've had, none of them had the courage to go out and vote in November. These are people that are very vocal, and I'm outraged by that. They become civic-minded individuals, but they don't take a minute to go out and vote and put representation before them that should be in place to help them. So I'm just saying, we have to put something in place, and I think it doesn't mean because of snow. I think we have to tackle, we touched upon it, like I said earlier, parking restrictions. We have to come in and put a parking program within our community to alleviate the problem throughout the year, and then in times of emergency, it makes it so much easier. We'll never get to curb without cooperation. And I talked to one individual where they have and they have a great program. I forget what town he mentioned it was. 4 hours in the morning, one side gets done. 4 hours in the afternoon, the other side gets done. So this is how you complete curb to curb. You have to have cooperation, and you'd be surprised. Who knows more about their street than the neighbors who live on the street? So they'll get in tune with that once we get a program in place. And I have people on Conan Street that complain, one's favoritism for this, they know someone from the DPW, this one here. I know that's all nonsense, but what it is if you just go down the middle of the street, sometimes it doesn't take the effect that it should take. It doesn't give proper passage, and it's dangerous. And then we're coming up with new ordinances that want to restrict people to shovel their sidewalks. Question, where's the snow going? If they don't put it somewhat in the street a little bit, how do you do your sidewalk? I mean, because more often than not, we're not in the suburbs where they have yards where they could dump the excess snow and stuff like that. We have curb to curb, we have sidewalk homes. They're right on the sidewalk. So we have a pretty challenge in front of us, but I think we have to start somewhere, and I think it all comes with the parking restrictions. That's my effort on snow And I know that sometimes it's painful. In this particular year, the ice seemed to be more of a factor than it was in previous years, and because we had such a drastic period of very, very low temperatures. So that already automatically made the ground acceptable to freezing. So all the ingredients were in place for freezing for no matter what came down. So we were challenged no matter what we did. And so I applaud what you've done, and I think the DPW did an unbelievable job in handling what was happening. And unfortunately, some people didn't think it was fast enough, but as soon as I got the recalls, I checked it out, and then I made my calls to the DPW for assistance. And I always try to make sure that it's a valid one, because if some people just don't want snow in front of their homes at all, so we have to work with that too.
You can see that, Carlos, if you drive up and down the streets after a storm, you look at people's property, there's no snow in their driveways, no snow on the sidewalks, but, you know, where did it go? It went in the street.
Right.
And that just compounds the problem, because,
Right.
you know, after we were out there for 20 hours, we said, okay, it stopped snowing, everything looks good. You send the guys home, you come back in the next morning, and it looks like it was never done, because people are, you know, literally plowing snow out in the street, snow blowing out in the street, and they're impassable. And, you know, especially in Iriswood, that's very, very difficult up there, because they have one-sided pocket, and then once that builds up on the other side, unless I send the front end loader down there and I'm pushing back, you know, a mound 5 feet high, right back into their driveways and everything, then we get the, what are you blocking people's driveways against us? So I think that the parking restriction is the proper way to go, and a little bit of education on, you know, what to do, you know, don't keep opening up your driveway openings, because every time you open that driveway opening up, that's the only clearance there is, and it's not, you know, easy snow to plow. Once we go by there and there's an opening there, you got a plow blade that's, you know, 10 feet wide, and it's pushing everything in there, and it's all frozen ice and melted snow. And I understand why people get frustrated, but they actually create their own problems by throwing the snow back out in the street.
Councilman McKenna?
I just had an idea. I don't know if it would work or not. We have the street sweeping, and every, you know, one side has, you know, instead of doing it every other week, maybe you could do it maybe Wednesday and Thursday, something like that. Like have a snow removal,
Well, snow removal starts getting into the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And so when we're talking about plowing, the best way to do it is you put a parking ban on, parking restriction on. You're not allowed to park in the street until 12 to 24 hours after the completion of the storm, depending on the size of it, because that gives you the ability to push everything back and people can open up their driveway. So unless we're willing to do that, it's really not going to happen. And the people that do have, you know, no parking on their side, all the snow goes there. And it kind of is unfair, because we're plowing. We do try to plow left and right, but when you have 2 lanes to the right and 1 to the left, obviously you get twice as much snow to the right than you are to the left. So it does become a problem. And in the narrow streets, especially where you are, Joanne, I mean, we can't get a big piece of
I know,
equipment up on the hill, because the streets are too narrow, and they're parking on sidewalks, they're parking all over the place. And it's difficult.
The other
And,
problem is too, that a lot of these people, especially myself, I live on the hill, so I don't have a driveway. So, and I know in Iris Ward too, there's a lot of people that don't have driveways. So it's like, the people across the street, they have driveways, so they can put, and that's where the ban is, on their side. But where I live, there's no, you know, we don't have a driveway, so
I think-
it's tough when you don't have a driveway and you don't know where to put your car.
Well, you know, that's the reason why I think we don't have a comprehensive program, because all people don't have driveways. But when you look at other cities and towns that are smaller than us, they're larger than us, they do it. We just don't. We just haven't implemented it. It can be done. It comes with a little pain, and it probably comes with more political pain than anything else, because, you know, to me, I got a job to do. And as long as those streets are open, we can push it back. But then it becomes, you know, people do get aggravated, and we understand why they get aggravated. It's very frustrating, and they have a tendency to take it out on you people as opposed to us.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Councilman Patch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donnie, I don't, actually, the snow removal's been very good in my ward this year, and not too many complaints. But I do want to mention, ice. As you know, we had that problem over this road for years. The illegal septic pump going out in the street constantly and flooding and getting 10 inches of ice. And I keep calling you, but you keep responding, and I feel bad for you guys. They gotta go down there and they're gonna scrape that off. But now I noticed the ones they're replacing with the illegal sump pumps, they're going in there and they're replacing them, and they're putting the outlets out to the street. And now I got this similar problem on Asti Road.
We have over 30 locations throughout the city that we're experiencing.
And
that
one on
problem that
Geneva
you have.
Street.
Yes.
And, you know, I mean, it seems ridiculous if you're just creating more problems.
I think in the wintertime, there should be some resolution that we come up with, that the people should be putting that water in their backyard. It'll freeze, they'll get a big pile of ice, but it won't affect public safety.
Right.
That's
Agreed.
my-
I
that's
know
my-
this doesn't relate to you directly, but, you know, Council McKenna has a ordinance proposal to, I guess, upgrade or update the sidewalk
Parking.
shoveling for
Oh, shoveling,
homes.
yeah, snow removal.
And I know there's one on the books now, but I don't think it's is there one on the books, Madam
No,
Clerk?
they took it off.
They
There's
take it
one
all
for
off?
commercial property only.
Yeah, we're gonna make
For
residential.
commercial, yeah, so, but, you know, in response to Councilor Guinasso's shoveling the sidewalks and pushing the snow on it, realize these folks don't have to shovel the sidewalk from the house out to the curb. They can do a 3-foot path, and it's still enough to abide by the rule and still have a pile of snow along the curb, and they can still pile their snow from their cars or their driveways in that other 3-foot area from the sidewalk. Sidewalks are what, 6 or 8 feet, Johnny?
Actually, they're buried for some parts of the city, they're as small as 3 feet, and other parts of the city, they're as wide as 8.
Right, well, the
So
wider ones can.
I would
can
say
handle
the
it.
average is probably 4.5, 5
5
feet.
feet, so, you know, if you did, you know, took a foot for snow and 2.5 feet for walking, it's a legitimate,
And like I say,
Walking path.
the real issue is when you get a foot of snow or more, that's what it really creates these situations that you can't deal with, because even some of these bigger storms, if you look at the weather, you can kind of forecast how long it's gonna be around. We're getting some snow that's coming this week, and it'll be gone by Saturday, so it's,
Cool.
you know.
okay, any other issues on snow? Councilors,
No,
all set? The next item is the sign department. Can you update us on that?
Yeah, we made some changes there. We have some temporary reassignments. I have 3 people that are in the sign department right now to try to catch up on the backlog of signs that there. I know they've been working in your area. They're pretty much caught up with what they need to do in Ward 2. And after that, we're going down to Ward 1. We're gonna meet
Thank you.
with Council McKenna Wednesday morning to go over her plan. She has quite a few signs that need to be done there. Other than that, the guys are kind of staying pretty much on top of it. I think once we get this backlog finished up, we've got to go back down to Council Guinasso's area on Fairfield Street and put it back the way it was originally, because it's just, it's not working out for us down there. And so we're going to put it back to its original, how it was no parking on one side, and that's just the way it's gonna have to be, because
Cool.
it's just not safe.
I'd like to welcome Council Powers to our meeting. Council McKenna, anything else on this?
no,
No,
Thank you.
Councilor Guinasso?
Well, I had in the past several requests for signs. A couple of people moved since then, and the signage has been, Donnie, to be honest with you, a major problem based on the fact that requests are made, and it seems like they just go out in space, and historically, we've been told that, you know, this person's sick, this one's not in, this is, you know, it's an understaffed department to begin with. How do we, what would be your recommendation to
My
make sure.
recommendation is just to follow up on what 311 is presently doing. I think now that they're up and running, I think that problem's gonna go away, Arthur, as long as we maintain the current men that we have within the department once we catch up. You know, not to cast aspersions on the prior governors, but the record keeping was poor. This doesn't allow that. We actually take it out of the hands of the men, and Ruben and his staff categorize it for us, David put it in place. And so it's, I think once you give this 311 a chance to really show what it can do, it's gonna, for constituent services, not just for signs, but for everything. It's really a good program. I think it's gonna work out well, and it's gonna have a lot of benefits for you people sitting here.
So you think it's going to be a useful
I
tool
think
in
it's gonna be a
signage
very,
also?
very useful tool, and some of these points of frustration that you people have are gonna be eliminated.
Well, city service is a major frustration, not only for the resident, but for us, because we're receiving these calls,
I agree.
and it's frustrating to see the individual who's made a call to you a month later, and that call's not addressed, and, you know, it's like, you're put in an awkward position, you're like, you really didn't do anything for me. Well,
I
you know,
understand.
you're non-productive because you don't get the job done. And that's said, not once, not twice, but unfortunately, quite a few times throughout the course of a year. And it's hurtful based on the fact that I don't want to put anyone down, and I can't do the service that they're asking for. I just trying to cut the red tape between a resident and City Hall, and
And I
through the
think-
efforts of 311, I hope that does the
That's
job.
definitely gonna do it, Arthur. I have all the confidence in the world with 311, just seeing what it's done. I have all the confidence in the world with the gentlemen that are running it, and we have a good working relationship, and it takes that step away from us, so that generally what was happening is a lot of stuff gets put to the back burner, and then stuff that comes in, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, gets done, and then there's stuff laying out there for 6 months or longer that's not getting done.
In
Because
the tree,
out of
just to
sight,
get
well,
the one
tree
incident.
issues are totally different.
And
It's-
that's one I'm dying to get removed from my process.
We
I'm gonna
we
go
can talk
311
about
with
that,
that
Arthur,
because
but the bottom line,
they say
not
it's
to
on a
cut you
list,
off,
and
not
everyone
to
says,
cut you off.
where's the list?
The
Where am I on
bottom
the
line
list?
with the trees, it's just never enough money.
Okay, but we have to at least be truthful and say, we don't have the funding right now, but we refer to the, I don't know how to quote it, the list. And they say to me, okay, well, what's the
There is a
list?
list,
Where
but-
where am I on this
but
list?
people have to understand, because they don't like a tree in front of their house, doesn't mean we can take it down.
No, I understand, and
There are a
all
lot
they
of
need to be.
We get a lot of requests for trees, because people don't want them there, but
Yeah.
they're good,
Any
healthy,
live tree has to
trees,
be
and
recognized that it
that's-
stays.
That's the.
And as
but-
they mature, they
But
get
the next-
even more
the-
expensive.
The next thing they might ask, well, and how about if we can't remove the tree, how about trimming the tree so it's acceptable to be in
That
front of
can
my
be done.
home? Because some of these,
trimming the
they were putting the trees weren't the right source to be put in place. The roots are going else all over the place. They're going into their property, ruining their retaining walls, ruining their sewerage system, and they just do a heck of a lot of damage. And it's serious damage. And a lot of these folks, they don't have the funding to just, okay, I'll do the infrastructure. Here's $5,000 that I can spend on my retaining wall, or $10,000 to dig up the pipes and do them over. This is serious money, and it's because the improper trees were put in there to begin with, and we don't have the type of control that we can start to service these people. It's a major concern.
It's a major problem for us. I know it's been a major problem for the mayor. He's actually, each year that he's been here, he's doubly funded that, you get halfway through the year, we go to him, listen, we're out of money.
Donnie, I waited
You know?
3 years. You know what I did? Called an outside source, dig up the trees, did the roots, and I called Caruso, pave around and it cost me a few $1,000.
It was a live tree, Arthur.
It wasn't a live tree. It wasn't a live tree.
Counselor Patch, on signs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as the signs, I've seen in the last month or so a great improvement in getting some signs put up and I've been working with 311, Alan and Randy up there, and they do a great job. I know you get them, and you guys, I know you changed the crew. You had a problem there with one being out a lot, and, but since you got on top of it, it's really improved a lot in the last couple of weeks, so just keep up the good work. That's all.
I can also attest to that. I know the guys have been down my neighborhood a lot. You know, these are signs that traffic had approved last fall, and we're just starting to get, especially down in the Garfield area where we made it a one-way pattern. And I just want everybody to know that now Standish Road is one-way going from North Shore Road down to Porter, and Elliott Road is coming westbound from Porter all the way up to Clark Road. Clark Road is one-way going down to Walcott Road, and Curtis Road is going from Walcott down to Elliott only. So I ask everybody to be careful. Please follow the one-way signs, the do not enter signs, especially during school time. There's a lot of parents that are driving there, and we don't want anybody driving the wrong way and have a head-on collision. So that's my 2 points there. The only issue I had, Donnie, is on the 311 with signage. I've put in requests for signs to be done, and they weren't done, and they were closed. The items were closed.
I seen that, too, Ira. I think we talked a little bit about that. There are, guys look at things and they'll say, okay, is this actually warranted? Yeah, do we really need to put that sign up there? Because there's a lot of, not particularly picking on what you're saying, but there are some crazy requests out there for signage. And their thing was they just closed it out as opposed to saying, okay, I know there were two no U-turns signs on Nasha Road that, you know, the one I picked up on, they used to, and they would say, well, you know, what mandates the fact that we need these two no U-turn signs on Nasha Road? It's a double-lined street, and is it that a chronic problem? So in something like that, they should probably just, you know, reach out to you or reach out to me and instead of just closing it out. I had, Ruben and I talked about it last week, and I've had that conversation with them, and it's something that they're gonna need to take another look at, because there are a lot of signs on one-way streets that people, we want one-way signs on these streets at the top of the streets going in the direction that they're going in. It's totally unnecessary, and they're very expensive. You know, putting up a one-way street between the manpower, the sign, the poles, and the stud, and the everything, it's $150 to put up one-way sign if you're putting it completely up. And so if you're doing that on every street, the top of every street, and, you know, some people are putting requests in, not necessarily the people here, but anybody can put that request in. It's not just councilors, it's, you know, people, they get on 311, they want to put a request in it. So I think we really have to have something in place, and that'll, you know, this information that 311 will collect over the first year will give us an indicator of, you know, what the actual real needs are and where we're going and what's warranted and what's not warranted. But they shouldn't be closing out things that, if it's not done, it shouldn't be closed. There
Right.
should be some other type of explanation for it in, you know,
Right.
communication in the future.
And the thing is, just on those no U-turn signs, you know, those are at the bigger intersections on North Shore Road, Blake and Elliott, where, and it wasn't even my thoughts, is I got complaints from
I agree. but, you know,
residents saying, hey, listen, anybody's doing it, and in those locations, there's no two lines, because it's broken up at,
Because of the
because of the intersection.
Right.
And people are doing the one-ways, and, I mean, the U-turns, and sometimes it's bad, especially during the peak traffic hours, they cause havoc.
I see it here on Broadway. They
Yep.
do it, so it's,
Yep.
you know,
So, signs, Council Howes?
No, just a general question with regard to 311.
We're gonna
That's-
talk about that
that's
next.
And I just looked
We gotta
at
do
one,
the,
can I make one point, like
Yep.
Charlie made on the snow removal, and how, you know, it's been pretty good, it's pretty much always been pretty good up until, but here's an area that you can look at and say, okay, the streets are plenty wide, the people that live on those streets for the most part put their cars in their driveways, so the people in Ward 6 make it actually easy for us to do our job
Right.
up there. So that's the reason, not that we do put any more attention into Ward 6 than we do any other ward. It's just that it's wide open, wide streets, there's generally, the people don't park on the street anyway. During a snowstorm, they park in their driveways, and that shows you the difference between if you had a total parking ban on.
That's a perfect area for it.
It's a perfect
Yeah.
example of it,
Yeah.
and it's,
Yeah, no, right.
and that could be, I won't say as good in some of the other neighborhoods, but it would make it much better if there was no parking in
Yep.
the other areas.
Okay. The next item is the status of some new equipment. Just fill us in of the problem, and what you have, and how many pieces, actually mention how many pieces of equipment we've had out in snow, how many we, of our own, and how many private contractors, is that?
We generally we got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We generally put about close between 10 and a dozen of our own pieces out now. That it's double what we were putting out last year. We still have one piece of equipment that we're gonna be picking up this week, but I think what people were really interested in was the trash compactor that we had bought. When I received it, we put it into operation. I didn't like what I saw, and I sent it back to the manufacturer down in New Jersey to rectify the problems with it, not just with the operation, but I didn't like the paint job. We didn't particularly care for as well. And we sent it down there, and we're ordering a different type of tipping barrel for the back of it. I received communication today from Ed Nolan. The truck should be up in Massachusetts. Out in Worcester is where we have all our stuff built. It's Fleet Electric is the company that it does all the specialty work on the trucks, and it should be there this week, where hopefully we'll get it back in the next week to 10 days if everything goes properly.
'Cause I know the guys have been working.
Oh, they're killing
a
themselves. They're
difficult-
working out of the pickup
Difficult
truck.
situation,
Yes.
work off the pickup truck,
Yes.
and, you know, I know it's difficult, I've seen them out there, and I
Right.
know it's not nice.
No.
It's not nice for them, so, but thank you. And how many private contractors we put out on
It
this?
varies depending on the storm. We could have as many as, little as 20 and as many as 40 or 50 at
Depending on
times.
the amount of snow and the size of the equipment.
Yeah, and we're gonna need to kind of do some adjusting. The last couple of years, we lost a couple of our contractors, either went out of business or they cut back on certain things. And so this year, we did have a lack of some of the heavier equipment, like the loaders and bigger trucks that we need. And a lot of that has to do with our pricing. So we're, you know, when this year's over, we'll sit down with the mayor and the auditor and decide, you know, where we need to go. We'll do a comparison of what other cities and towns are paying their vendors, because I think that's where some of the heavy equipment went, because we're underpricing
Where the money
our heavier
goes.
equipment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Thank you for that. Now we'll talk about 311, and between you and Ruben and Alan, fill us in. I know Councilor Powers go first. He's new to the evening, hasn't said much, and this is the first item he wants to address. So, Ruben?
Hi, Ruben Cantor, Director of Office of Innovation and Data Management.
Good evening. Ruben, it's more or less a procedural question. If I myself or someone, a resident, puts in a request to 311, and let's say it's something that can't be done, is a communication directed back to the residents with the specific reason it can't be done, or to myself with the reason it can't be done?
I believe it should be. What I would like to do, actually, Alan, I don't know if you'd like to address this. Alan Fitzmaurice, who is the supervisor of the Office of 311, I think would be better suited to answer exactly how
Fine,
things are working on a
fine,
day-to-day
yeah.
basis on a question like that. So let me turn it over to Alan.
You wouldn't have a specific example of something that couldn't be done, because most of the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis are routine requests that the DPW or ISD or the Board of Health can handle. We do have the issue of sidewalks, where people are calling in to have sidewalks repaired, and that's a special situation that's being handled by community development and the DPW. And in a case like that, we explain the situation of the sidewalk list and also the issue with trees. But if if we have the information that the request that they are making, for example, if someone called in and wanted a sign change or something that would have to go to the traffic commission, then we would advise them the procedure to have that done. I don't routinely get calls for service that we can't address.
What if somebody calls in with regard to a drainage issue on a particular street? That would go to DPW. Okay,
Correct.
at what point could we expect that to be resolved, or an answer as to why it can't be resolved or when it will be resolved?
Well, that's a very open-ended question, John, because.
I understand that.
Because of the conditions that exist, especially in your ward. If you're referring to Sagamore, obviously, that's the bottom of the fishbowl, as they say. You're at the lowest line area there. And when we get drastic, heavy, big storms, it generally takes a tide or two to get out, especially under the recent conditions that we had in the Eastern County ditch, where you have a buildup of phragmites and debris that's in that ditch. And the other aspect of that is it's frozen. And not only is the culvert frozen, but the tide gates themselves are frozen in place, so they're not operating at 100%. So there are times, especially in this last storm, and even drainage on streets that tie right into culverts. Especially, once again, it was in your area on the Mills Ave area. You have icebergs sitting on, 3 feet thick, sitting on top of an outfall, and some of them freeze. So these are the conditions that we exist. Joanne, you had a similar problem down on Pearl Avenue. It's just that, I think under the conditions, if that had happened, John, in this past storm, and it was, 60 degrees out, I think that storm would have been easily taken care of in one storm cycle. But because of the conditions, the area where it is, it took a couple of days for the water to completely recede from that neighborhood. We've spent a lot of money down in that area on upgrades. I think the next step in the process there is to make sure that Eastern County ditch is cleared out properly. Revere Street, the culverts, the state culverts and everything, it's all part of the system. And once that happens, I'm not going to tell you that it will be totally eliminated, but it will be much better than it is presently.
Well, hypothetically, maybe this is for Ruben to answer. If somebody on one of the, let's for example, somebody on Archer Avenue or Gilbert or John or one of those streets calls to say that the water is not draining properly in the catch basin. Now, I understand that, it could be frozen at the outfall, but is this information disseminated to the person that calls, and are they given an idea as to when that might be resolved?
Well, the issue is, we don't even know it's frozen until it comes to us. And then we'll go down and look at it. And, so I don't think those kinks have been kind of worked out yet, John. We just put this thing online that, at some point, we'll report back to Alan at some point in time. And that's something we can build on with this program to make it that much better for the constituents. I don't think it's something that's automatic.
So we have just upgraded the Public Works work order system to a system that they're using much, I think, more effectively than the system they were using previously. So the way the process is now working is if a call or an email or a mobile request comes in for a catch basin cleaning, that request then immediately goes into the new work order system for the Public Works. The supervisors over at the water and sewer and the drainage side will get a text message informing them of the new work order. If there's any reason why they're not going to do that work order, they will let Alan and Randy know what's going on, or they'll put it in the system, say that they've inspected it, and that notification of any inspection or anything in progress immediately goes to 311, and they'll put it into the 311 system where if the constituent has left an email address, they'll get notified of any changes.
Or a telephone call even if,
So we haven't been doing phone calls. If they're set up for a text message, we'll send a text of any updates. We haven't at this point been calling everybody for every single update on each request. That's a little bit beyond our current
I think
staffing level.
the important part of the system is, not only getting it done, but letting people know what status it's at, why it can or it can't get done, rather than just let them linger out there.
And so I would strongly encourage anyone who is calling or emailing or putting a notice on the web or on the mobile device to use your email address, because you will get every notification, or put a phone number where you can receive text messages. If you have the mobile device, you can also set your alerts to get those. There are a lot of ways to get those automatic notifications. Anytime there's an update from the Public Works side, you'll get a notification on the 311 side. But at this point, we haven't gone through the process of trying to figure out, who has not left an email or a text message, and then making phone calls to those people. That's just hasn't been our problem.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, what I do when we have storms of that nature, I take into consideration, number one, the full moon and the high tide. And once the level of water reaches a certain point, that from experience, I know that there's no way for that water else to go but up. And until that water recedes in the marshes, see, I'm very lucky. Living in the top of a marsh, I can look over. When I see the marsh fully involved with water, I know that I'm in for a rough night, because that's going to be affecting people's homes, and it's going to be affecting their sewer lines. And so I expect that to happen. But from experience, I know as soon as the tide is starting to go out and recede, I see the water level going down. And it's the only way it's going to come down. It's the only way. There's no way in the world you're going to remove that. And for all intents and purposes, because of the CDM project that's been going on this past year and annoying everybody, including myself, but one thing they did do was they cleaned these lines. I mean, they had to get down there and do their work. So as annoying as it was for all these folks during the past year or so, or two, it's been beneficial, because it's worked to our advantage now. And I noticed in this astronomically high tide that we had the other day, and with the amount of rain, I didn't get that many calls, based on the fact that we were clean, and as clean as you could possibly be.
I can answer that, Arthur. There's a simple answer to that. Those tide gates did exactly what they were supposed to do.
They did.
The areas that were not generally prone to flooding were underwater. And the areas that were generally prone to heavy flooding from the ocean didn't happen, because the tide gates kept it
Even with
back.
that compromising walls at the
Yes,
floodgate, it
and,
was
we
working.
had some issues in Ward 5 where it went over the top on Mills Ave, and the amount of rain that came with that storm just didn't get out because of the condition of the frozen culvert. But that is the reason. All the areas that were prone to flooding that had those tide gates didn't get a drop. And all the areas that never flood was underwater. So it's because the tide came up so high
Yep.
that it was actually coming up through the
No way you
catch
could stop
basins.
it.
It wasn't even coming through, it was just coming right out through the drainage system. Beach Market killed Bennington Street, Revere Beach Parkway,
I knew it was
107,
coming as soon
North
as I
Shore
saw it.
Road, everywhere. I think there was only one road that you can get out of Revere. You either had to take Revere Beach Boulevard to Lynn or Route 1. And those were the only two ways you could get in and out of Revere.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan, I just want to say thank you. I used 311 a lot during the storm, and a lot of my issues were answered, so I just want to say thank you. I've had great success with 311 and your staff and you. Donnie, I have a question for you. It's about the pumping station on Bennington Street. What is that used for? Can that push out water, drain water?
Not from the areas that you're thinking about. That is actually for flooding from rain. It's not to stop the ocean from coming up or in. If it did happen to impact down through the Ward 2 area, if we had some flooding through the system there, or down on Broad Sound Avenue, we try to get it going. The Jones Road area, that'll take care of.
That's not the one I'm talking about.
Right, so the Bennington Street pump
Right.
station, they've down in Belle Isle, Pearl Ave and stuff like that, has no effect on it whatsoever.
Okay,
It does, however, take the watershed that's up behind the Immaculate Conception Church and that whole lower area down in there. It does alleviate the flooding in that area as well.
okay.
So it does
But
reach
it wouldn't
up-
do, it wouldn't clear Bennington Street if Bennington Street got,
No, it's
Okay.
because it's on the opposite side of
All right.
the
Thank you.
pump station.
On the, just wanted to add on the snow operations thing, just to the point you made. On January 4th and 5th, we had over 400 calls on those 2 days to 311. We had submitted 166 requests to Public Works related to snow requests, and every single one of them was closed in, most of them in under an hour, some in, in a few hours. So it was pretty remarkable to watch the operation at work, and we could see it all up on the screen as it was happening. So.
thank you.
Tell you guys, I'm a big supporter of the 311, as everybody knows, 311. And I just give one little story about the Public Works scenario. Literally 4 years ago, I asked for a catch basin to be cleaned out under the normal DPW work requests. And we had trouble with the Vector and the Claw and getting a private contractor in. And then 2 years later, I put it in under C-Click Fix, and nothing still got done. But last month, I put it in 311, and within a week, that catch basin was cleaned out, and that whole, and now that area on Campbell Ave doesn't flood anymore. Because I remember when we had the fire at 190, it was during cold time, and that whole area flooded from Centennial Ave up to where the rise of Campbell Ave is.
That's also due to the fact that the mayor gave us 5 additional employees to help us in that department, and that department is really clicking on all cylinders. And I know it's his intention at some point in time when, when money allows to do the same thing on the general side. So I think, along with the 311 system, with the new men and everything, I think people are gonna be very happy as to see how the system actually operates in the future.
And Alan and Randy do a great job down there. They're, very personable. They're very nice on the phone, trying to take care of people's woes, and everybody calling and panicking, and they have calm voices, and they know how to handle them. Ruben, I don't know.
But no one wants to talk to me.
Yeah.
They have done such a great job.
Yeah.
I get to listen to them calm down people all day long, but I also think it's really...
And Denise, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Denise,
absolutely.
too.
It's also worth noting the relationship that they have built with the DPW guys. So they have a great relationship, and that really, I think, helps get those work orders in and done and back, and the communication has been fantastic. So I give them a lot of credit for the work they're
Absolutely.
doing building that relationship. And
It's a
all
good
that.
system, and I know we're still tweaking it as we go along.
It's
I'm
only
going
4
to
months
talk to
old,
them in
so-
a regular, excuse me?
It's only 4 months old, so...
That's it. And I just want to relate to, very quickly, to Council Guanasso's tree issue. I know the superintendent said there wasn't really a lot of money in the account. Now, I know that we as a council are willing to support DPW and the mayor. If you wanted to come in and put in $20,000, that's something we would support in the budget, because we know that the people are getting their services, and we can get that private contractor in there more for a year, for a full year, rather than run out of money in March. Because I know in the wintertime, we use a lot of tree work when trees go down on ice storms. So I think, we ought to, send a message to the mayor, and I think we're doing it right now. Give us some more money, the people deserve it, they pay their taxes for it. We'll put in some money for different things and get things done.
Put in the new budget.
Exactly, put it in the new budget. So I'll send that message to you, Ruben, to relate to the mayor. And, people, I'll tell you, taxes are going up, we know that, for various reasons. But if they know they're getting better services, they won't complain as much.
Happy to pass that along.
So, any other councilors willing to talk
Thank you.
about Public Works? Anything? Well, with that, we're 5 minutes early. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Very informative meeting. And I thank Ruben and Alan and Donnie for coming up and filling everybody in and keeping us up to date. Thank you. That is the end of our meeting. Thank you very much.
Donnie, I'm all right, man.
I want to share this calendar with you.
Oh, I see. That's great. Yeah, I got one.
From your friend, from Papa.
She sent me
Take it to John. Take it to John.
I'm gonna get it.
Take it to John and say, John, I have a special friend that wants you to have this. And give it. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. So what are you doing? You're losing weight or what? You are.
I'm always the same. I need some dental work. My bridge gotta be replaced. And it's one I've had for like 35 years, so it's a 9-unit bridge, it's like 60 grand.
So how do you do that?
That's a pain in the ass. Gotta do it. I got no clue. Because the structure is just so it would be black.
Wow.
You get old, it's tough to get old now.
I don't know about that.
How are you? Good, how are you? I'm good, thanks.
So,
What's new in the city, yeah?
nothing. Everyone seems to be quiet. We had that fire.
Tony, I'm gonna give,
Nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm gonna get started early.
Okay. Who's on the committee besides me? Arthur?
I'm gonna double check.
You on zoning?
Good morning. Which one am I using? Which mic?
I'm in the zoning
This one, and it's always live.
Always like, gotcha.
Am I in the zoning?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Would you quit?
What's up there?
I'm ready, Rick. Whenever you are.
You know what? I do too.
November 27th. So now you're
Is this off? I just heard. I just heard. I just got a text saying that. I
All right.
heard what you're saying.
Is Rick the only one here?
You can't whisper, you can't shuffle papers.
We have microphones now?
Yeah.
These are all live, too.
No, yes and no. You don't have house microphones, you have microphones.
the other, the unit's still up for repair.
Once the meeting starts,
I'd like to get started, Rick.
the microphones
Couple of weeks. It's already.
So, right?
Well, they.
It's always been like that.
Ashley said she sent it out and she paid to have a prepaid come back here, so they have it in place. And as soon as, it should be less than a time.
So,
What's today, the 4th?
those are delicious.
What's today's date, the 5th, 6th?
Delicious. You ever been to the Spanish Market? We're starting. I'm not gonna say till.
Rick, you all set?
I think you're gonna bang it. Oh, no, there you go.
Should we say Bill
Excellent.
Murray instead?
We all please rise, salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome, folks, to the zoning subcommittee meeting of February 5th, 2018. I'd like to call into order the members. Steve Morabito. Here. Councilor Charles Patch.
Here.
Councilor Dan Rizzo. Said he will be late. Councilor Tony Zambuto.
Here.
Tonight we'll be taking up the matter of both 320, 329 Revere Beach Parkway, as well as 540 Revere Beach Parkway. We'll start with 320, 329 as it stands on the calendar.
Pictures, photos, selfies. It's a good guy. Yeah, he is a good guy.
And this is the HR Development LLC
of 30B Railroad Street, Revere, Massachusetts, seeking permission from the Revere City Council to raise the existing non-conforming structure and construct a new 6-story mixed-use structure with 2 commercial units on the first floor and 145 residential units on the remaining floors at 329 Revere Beach Boulevard, Revere, Massachusetts. My understanding is that throughout the period of the past 6 months, this has been through several renditions. My understanding that this will go through several more. It will be remained into committee.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Lawrence Simeone for the applicant, Achara Development LLC. As you noted, we have gone through a couple of changes, certainly material changes, as we've discussed with our principal neighbor, the St. George. This is property located in the RC1. It's about an acre, .13 of land, and our proposal is 145 units on a mixed-use project. So since the last time we were before you, we have been working with the developer and our principal venture partner, NRP, which is the 7th largest apartment developer, multifamily developer in the country, about making some changes to the exterior of the structure and to basically enhance the mixed-use aspect of the structure. We anticipate presenting those changes to the St. George. We've had a difficult time getting a meeting with them. As we noted publicly, we tried to get a meeting, but somebody in some critical person's family had a death in the family, and that delayed us. So we're hoping to meet with them as soon as possible to talk about these material changes, which will include structural relocation, along with enhancing the mixed-use features that I discussed. That said, the 90-day clock, if you will, on your action, it ends at February 25th, and so one of the things that I'm looking at is the fact that you have no meetings for the rest of the month, with the exception of the 26th, which is beyond the 90-day period. And so I penned a letter on February 1st, 2018 to Jessica Giannino, the president of this honorable body, seeking, in accordance with state law, the opportunity for the applicant to extend the final date of action for a period of 60 days in order to allow us the further opportunity to meet with the people we want to meet with, and hopefully maybe even come back before this committee with those changes before we ask the committee as a whole to act on it. As you can see, we are working with, this is the platform that we last left you with. This is the platform we hope to change, both with structural changes, relocation of the building changes, and changes to advance the mixed-use aspect, which is the streetscape and so forth. So at this time, I'd ask that you keep this matter in committee. I'll be before you as committee as the whole on my request for extension shortly.
Thank you, Attorney Simeone. Any of my councilors, Council Morabito?
Well, I'm just... hot mics there.
So I just wanted to say that I'm glad you're going to go back to the drawing board and comply with what zoning Board of Appeals said, and I'd be willing to give you the extension if you can meet with their standards.
Anybody on the left side, Councilor Patch?
Thank you very much.
I'm going to go in order, John. I'll get you after Pat, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to mention that I have no problem with giving an extension on this matter. Thank you.
Councilor Powers?
Just a point of information for the body.
Sure.
Last week, the Zoning Board of Appeals had a meeting at which time this was proposed, and not the extension, the building itself, and I think it was brought up that they lacked 80 parking spaces, number one, and number two, that the, what they were requesting was flush with the sidewalk, and they were looking for a 10-foot variance on the side yard, and at that time, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted 5-0 to not to allow that. So I just want to bring the body up to date so that they're aware of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know what mic's working, what's not here.
Now, this is the first time I'm surprised that we can't hear your voice.
My voice will always be heard.
We got Rick in the back laughing there, that's beautiful.
I don't need a microphone. I certainly support the extension, and I'm sure all things will be worked out eventually here. So that's all I have.
That said, I'm going to just take a moment. This is a $50 million project. My understanding is that, and I hope there's some remediation for Sullivan Park. I know that was part of the process in the past, but there's some kind of confluence with that. I do understand that the ZBA is concerned about having the property flush with the, I would say, the sidescape or the streetscape, but at present so isn't Bianchi's Pizza Shop and the Boulevard. The current properties are non-conforming as they stand. But whatever you can to do to amend it to make this project go through, it would be an important step for the city of Revere. Adding more parking is obviously something that the city would want, considering that the majority of the projects in the past have been allowed with minimal parking. And one of the things that I plan on doing in this zoning committee is actually increasing parking within the city, because at this point, I think many of the projects in the past, including the St. George and many of the others on Revere Beach Boulevard, either by right or by folly, have been given too many liens when it comes to parking, and right now that's a critical issue in the city. So
Thank you, Mr.
I welcome you back. This will be remanded to subcommittee. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the 540 Revere Beach Boulevard accessory sign.
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm Roy McDowell, representing Based on Revere LLC for 540 Revere Beach Boulevard, and we're here this evening for request on a sign. You'll see here, and I think you've received these. If you don't have them, I have 11 by 17s with me. I can give you those if you don't have them. Would you like those?
Sure.
So basically what we have is a very small sign we'd like to put in the front of the building. It's parallel to Revere Beach Boulevard. It is approximately 6 feet long, and it's about 42 inches high, and it's very thin and narrow, and it's glass. So it's just going to be a sheet of glass that'll be lit from within at night. So it'll say Beach House with the Beach House logo, and that's why we're here this evening. And this here gives you a visual of the sign, and if you'll, you can see it here, and you'll see it on your smaller drawings. And it's actually...
Very elegant.
Thank you. It's actually just to the right of the main courtyard as you drive in. We have a courtyard in front of the building as you drive in, and it's all pavers. It's not asphalt, but it's all modular pavers with 2 pergolas, under lighting, and quite significant amount of landscaping. Matter of fact, after meeting with Frank Stringy, we've actually increased the landscaping in the front of the building, adding in more coniferous and evergreen plant material to break these screens that are in the garage area.
Very good. Gentlemen, for the moment, I'd like to break and ask of counsel, because it is his ward and deference to him, if he has any questions or...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had one call from a resident down there who was a bit misunderstanding with regard to what the sign was. They thought it might be a billboard on top of the roof, et cetera, et cetera. And so in the interest of transparency, what I did was I spoke with the Carol Fisher, who is the secretary down there, and asked her if we could put a schematic down there of the sign and dimensional requirements. And she agreed to it, and then we let people in the building know that if they really wanted to see what the sign was like, they could go into the office and examine it. And this is a sign, you all have this in front of you. I think this is something you would find in the more affluent communities of the Commonwealth, the Dovers, the Wellesleys, the Westons, and places like that. And I think it's a tremendous positive step for that project. It's something that I think people will marvel at when they go by there and see what a nice job this particular developer has done. And I, as a ward councilor, I certainly support this 100%. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does anybody on the committee have any commentary that they wish to make? Council Patch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I have no problem with this sign going up. It's a beautiful sign, and it's always good to go along with the ward council. Thank you.
Council Zambudo?
Well, you know, my position on this type of stuff is if I support a project, I'm certainly going to support a sign for it, so
Very well.
it's tastefully done, and of course I support it. Thank you.
Council Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had one question for the developer. The sign does look very nice, and I know you showed it at one of the last council meetings. Doesn't look like it's going to be overly intrusive to the neighborhood. But just on the property alone, I know that this project was approved a few years back, and it's coming to fruition now. Does this building intend on charging for the parking that if a tenant rents a unit, will they be charging additional for parking?
Yes, very similar to Ocean 650 and the Vanguard. The spaces that are indoors, because we do have some spaces outside, the outside spaces we don't charge for, but the inside spaces we do charge for, and I think we're actually slightly less than Ocean 650 or Vanguard in the charging for those.
How many outside spaces?
I think we have about 22, I believe. We didn't require or ask for any variances for parking. We have plenty of parking, but we have, I think, over 366 parking spaces.
Understood. So I know that, once again, coming to the council for certain special requests in addition to the proposal, I would consider, and I know that I'm not on zoning subcommittee, but I would consider, any of these requests to be held up with the fact that you'd be charging for the additional parking charging for parking spaces, considering to me, it's somewhat of a loophole. When you were granted the license to build a few years ago, it came with parking. Now you're telling us that they're going to be charging for the additional spaces.
Well, it's actually...
Point of order.
Yes.
First of all, that's a commerce issue. This is not related to the sign at hand. Second of all, underneath the law, he has a right to charge what he wishes to charge. So that said, if this isn't pertaining to the sign itself, I'd like to move forward. Other than that, do you have any further comment?
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a comment on that?
Please.
There was never intention not to charge for parking. I mean, those parking structures cost many millions of dollars, and you really need to charge for parking to offset that. And frankly, what we're charging is what is the norm in the marketplace.
Okay. Thank you for the answer. Appreciate that.
With that said, I'd like to take this up for a vote.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Roll call of the members of the zoning subcommittee on the special permit for 540 Revere Beach Boulevard. Councilor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rizzo is absent. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes, and Chairman Rotundo?
Yes.
Yes, the special permit is a favorable recommendation to the full city council.
With that said, this will be the closing of the Revere City zoning subcommittee. Thank you for your attention and your time. Be well. Thank you.
Correct.
All over the neighborhood, in front of each other.
I gotta go get coffee.
Revelations tonight, Revelations. We went to, the Revelations, right? This is a wide town, city council, kids.
Councilor, where were the revelations when they built one of the units, when they built Atlantic House? Where were those revelations? Revelations. Where were the revelations on Atlantic House? You voted for it.
Rather than putting potentially they are,
But it's on a separate where they have a choice.
when they pay their, that's, they're not gonna have a choice. So they can increase the rents by 50 bucks. So it's just gonna let that. Almost
I'm not doing it.
That's right, too. You're
Got the flow. Should I put lipstick on? George. No, I'm going next week.
That's what we want. Forced out into the street.
Okay, here we go.
Hot mic.
I know, I'm just getting used to this. Where's George? Where's George?
You're right.
That has to, so basically it needs to be closed and then has to go public hearing. So in order for us to do any of this, we have to adopt the 3% cap on marijuana. Even if we want to hold our whole food and employment, we have to pay an additional 3%. We put that in the law.
Yeah, we get some new mitigation.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this at all. Yeah. Yeah. I know. But. She gave it to me.
I'm only 38 years old. I'll be 39 in 2 weeks. Can I work for you? I still gotta feed the family, man. I'll be 39 in 2 weeks.
This whole desk, it's great.
Getting closer. The goat will retire a lot longer, a lot quicker than me. I can tell you that much right now.
No, I mean, one of the problems is Malden Street. Malden Street? Yeah, okay, Main Street, I guess. Do you want to take, I think it should be the whole city of Revere, yes. Because, I mean, people walk to work, kids walk to work. I know, but this is, it's not.
It's showtime.
Okay.
Wait till I come out beyond
disappointment. What? Yeah. No, these aren't the new mics. These are hot mics.
Hey, where did he go? I'm gonna talk to him.
Go to the other side, will you?
Huh?
Get it on that table. They want to get up.
The money's on the table. It's okay, so you want to take him out. If the money's on the table when I get up, we have a deal. If not,
Actually, what that's doing is it's increasing everyone's rent and making those who don't have cars pay rent. Parks is what I'm saying.
no, they don't sell it.
How do you figure that, John? No. How do you figure that?
It's true, but
How do you figure that?
why do they should factor into the cost of their build-up, like most people do. When you build a house, do you charge extra for the two-car parking? It increases the value. Exactly. It increases the value of their property.
But the family could let me back in, that's right. Those guys don't even know my name. That's worse than any other project we have before us. Gonna charge. You see how successful it is down here? No one's gonna pay. We're gonna park all over it.
Yes. Yeah, and
Yes.
she had the flu shot too. Well, I'm trying to fight it now. I have,
So I'm gonna ask him.
I have an extra pen. I got time.
Hey, they didn't have anybody at the hall yesterday? Nobody show up for the football?
Well, I asked him, the whale that Donnie said that he thought that they could have got the EPA a waiver to use that overflow, the gold, but they didn't. CDM Smith didn't do it. He wasn't even.
So what do you do?
He wasn't even an engineer. He was like.
I don't want to be up here, believe me. I don't want to be up here.
She's pretty young at that dimension. Pretty young at that dimension. You're 70. I'm 67. You know that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
You're younger. You're younger than I'm serious.
Yeah, no, I'm older than you, right?
You're here for John Leone?
Everybody goes.
What are you here for?
John Lyon contemporary.
Oh, good. Good.
I wouldn't give the Michael,
Excellent. What are you going to do?
You gotta see that.
What kind? I know. What kind of life do you want?
We'll know tomorrow. We go to get
Oh,
the,
excellent.
those passes or whatever.
Good for you. You're very good with
Going to
communication.
Yeah.
So, Ash, you take a picture of me? Probably the. Oh my God! What the hell's going on? My phone's broken. Sue Woodcock dared me to say dilly dilly.
Oh, I'm gonna go like I go to market.
Sue Woodcock dared me to say dilly dilly. No, I won't do it. I'd say Philly Philly. Yeah.
We going across?
What?
Yeah.
Dilly dilly?
Yeah, we should.
Oh, I
There's a lot of
know.
motions here.
Probably first and last
I'm not
time.
gonna do any talking. In fact, I'm just gonna
It's
sit
good.
here
It's a good experience. It really is.
Joe, move.
There's no way. I don't think so. What are you, a rookie? You don't know the light.
I'm sure it's great. Oh my God. It's very far away. I can crop it. I can crop it. I Second Crawford. Got it, got it, got it.
We're ready to start in 2 minutes. Right now, Joanne's the president.
What am I doing?
What is it?
Jessica's
I'm
not
not
here.
saying it. Don't ask me
Jessica's not
to.
here. Who is? No. Can you hear this? Or movie like that? Yeah. Then I'll hear that.
Oh, I have a problem. It's not, I don't like it.
You can hear it.
She said it's okay.
What's the latest with it? I hate your like.
It's not on yet.
What's the latest?
Well, I emailed them on Monday asking for a date, still didn't get back to me. Emailed them again on Friday, didn't receive a response back yet. They have the system, but they're not telling me when it's gonna be ready.
Can we do smoke signals or something?
Smoke signals.
Where are they from?
Waltham sent ABI, but they had to send the unit out. They don't fix it themselves. They actually have to send it to the manufacturer. to
They're
send
not
it.
getting a new, they're not getting a new system? They're gonna keep this system? They don't wanna
Yeah,
use
we're gonna keep it, it's fine. And the thing just shorted out, they need to repair it. It's not like a,
I haven't seen them take too long to do.
I know. I know, how does
I will
that,
be there tomorrow.
7 to 10 business days? I don't
Probably
know.
still
They
in work
picked it
with,
up
what's his
last
name,
Friday.
down there at,
Wonder if someone did it on purpose.
No.
Elkhorn.
No, it started getting messed up after the blizzard, so they said it was, the error message is indicative of some sort of power surge, even though there's a surge protector on it, yeah.
Yeah, they don't do, they don't have the contract no more with the, Elkhorn or whatever, he's crazy. Paul, would go,
No.
he used to have the police, he used to do all the police work.
Joanne,
go like this and
I think the police did, I think the police did too, yeah.
Yeah, because I tried, when I was still parking clerk,
I can't hear one word
they
you
wouldn't even install the lights on the
Forget
new parking control vehicles when I was parking clerk. I didn't know
Bless you.
they wouldn't do it. Yeah.
Why, we didn't pay them?
They didn't pay,
I
they
don't know, they
paid
just
us.
said, we're not working with the city. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, he's walk.
I didn't ask questions.
Yeah, he's a nice kid, so.
I'm not saying.
I'll send these people an email tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Oh,
Maybe I'll forward my emails to the
crazy.
whole city council. I mean,
Guy's nuts.
it's a simple answer. Like,
idea. I mean,
when you
it's
send
not
something out for repair, you should get
That's not that,
an estimated
they're not
date.
even giving her an answer.
I know.
Trash.
Yeah,
They already got the,
disrespectful.
have they already got the pot?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Disrespect. We ready yet?
Yeah, we're gonna go in like
Post time.
3.
Bring him up to
2.
post, bring him up to post.
Remember how to say the Pledge of Allegiance?
We're gonna say the Pledge of Allegiance, sure. Good evening and welcome to the City Council meeting of February 5th, 2018. Please rise and salute the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we're here to City Council. Kindly request that all cell phones are shut off and turned on silent. If you are approaching the podium this evening, please be aware that this microphone that's going to be up here is just for the audience at home. It's not going to amplify sound. Please loudly and clearly. Thank you. Roll call of the members. Councilor Guanasso?
Here.
Here. Councilor Keith?
Here.
Here. Councilor McKenna?
Here.
Here. Councilor Morbido?
Here.
Here. Councilor Novoselsky? Here. Councilor Patch?
Here.
Here. Councilor Powers?
Here.
Here. Councilor Rizzo is absent. Councilor Rotundo? Is absent. Councilor Zambudo?
Here.
Here. And Council President Janino is absent as well. A quorum is present. Approval of the journal of the regular meeting of January 22nd, 2018.
Approved. Tonight, we had two subcommittee meetings. We're going to hear from Councilor Novoselsky with the Public Works Subcommittee report.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Vice President, tonight we had the first Public Works Subcommittee meeting, and we had in attendance the Superintendent of Public Works, the Director of IT Development, Ruben Cantor, Alan Fitzmaurice, the Supervisor of the 311 program. And we discussed tonight about past snow removal projects, snowstorms, and the snow removal and the pros and cons and what happened. We talked about the 311 system. We talked about the new equipment that has come in and the new piece that is due to come in this week. The new Packer that they have problems with, and they finally solved the payment and also the repairs. So those will be coming in this week. That machine will be coming in this week. And finally, what else did we talk about? There were 4 items that we talked about. And the signs, and also the 311 program. And hopefully, Councilor Patrick Keefe will get a copy of the matrix that he requested at the last meeting, and show what's going on with 311 and see how well the program's running. So that's it, Madam Vice President, for our committee report.
Thank you, Councilor. Before we start with Councilor Rotundo's zoning subcommittee, I'd like just to take this opportunity to say that I'm filling in for President Jessica Giannino, who's fighting the flu. So feel better, Jessica. Thank you. Councilor Rotundo, is he here?
Stepped out for a minute.
Okay.
Right
Go.
back.
All right. Should we continue?
You can hold that, the zoning subcommittee report.
Okay. Until he comes back? Okay.
On to communications, calendar item number 5, communication from the Parks and Recreation Director requesting approval of a conflict of interest form for John Leone, Sports and Fitness Coordinator, and he also serves as the junior varsity basketball coach.
Thank you. Is John Leone here tonight? No? Okay.
Madam Vice President?
Yes? Councilor Keefe?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I had an opportunity to speak to the Department of Recreation Director, Mike Hinojosa, as well as Mr. John Leone, who also works in the Recreation Department. I know that Coach Leone has a game this evening at the high school. He has been currently serving as the junior varsity coach for the high school basketball team since last season. And just recently this year, he took on employment at the Recreation Department. I know that this isn't something that we do often, but we have set precedents before where there have been teachers and/or school nurses that have taken on roles as coaches. If everyone out there doesn't know, the coaching positions pay approximately $4,000 a year for the amount of time that they put in. I think that these types of exceptions are really simple for us to understand and approve. The time that they spend sometimes practicing 5 nights a week with a few games, it turns into literally dollars an hour for the amount of time that they put in. So I'd be a strong advocate for Coach Leone and knowing what he's done with the kids, and I think that we should be able to move forward and approve this tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Keefe. Councilor Zambudo?
Thank you, Madam President. I also spoke with the Director of Parks and Recreation, and I'm not one that normally likes these kind of splits, but in these instances, this is when it's appropriate, not when it's for somebody else's salary or whatever, but these are certainly appropriate. I'm going to certainly support this, and I think we should vote this out this evening.
Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. Councilor Patch?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I just want to say I've known John for many years, and I've witnessed the work he's done with both boys and girls in baseball and basketball. He does a great job with the rec center, and I am also an advocate for him doing the JV basketball coaching job, which he also does a fine job with. And I think I think we all should support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. Councilor Ganath.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I also had conversation with Director Michael in reference to the applicant there, and I think it's well deserving, and I think it's, we all should be in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. And I'd like to say from the chair that I had John Leone as a student, and I think he'll do a great job. Thank you. Road call.
Shall the City Council approve the conflict of interest form for John Leone, the sports and fitness coordinator, and the junior varsity basketball coach? Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Keith?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rizzo is absent. Councilor Rotundo?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And Council President Janito is absent. The motion has been approved.
Yes. So we're going to take up the zoning subcommittee report from Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. At this time, I'd like to remand back to the committee the El Chara LLC of 320, 329 Revere Beach Boulevard. I'd like to pass affirmatively the 540 Revere Beach Boulevard sign for the beach house, and I hope that we can vote this up tonight. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Do we need a vote as a whole on the extension for the other matter before us? I believe we do.
Okay.
That's all we can.
So what was the,
Madam President, will we suspend rules in order to take up the extension?
sure. Yes. Suspension of rules.
Calendar item number 6, communication from attorney Lawrence Simeone on behalf of his client, HR Development LLC, requesting a time extension on special permit C-17-17 for 320 Revere Beach Boulevard.
Good evening, Madam Vice President. My name is Attorney Lawrence.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's okay. You can do it to Tony, you can do it to me.
Your voice isn't this deep, I'm sorry to tell you that.
Yeah, you think so? Okay.
Okay, all right, so I screwed
It's
that.
not so statesman-like either, unlike
Well,
Councilor Zambudo.
that's warranting
Anyway,
some points.
back to business. I have the pleasure of representing Achara Development LLC. We have been before your honorable body as well as the zoning subcommittee. We are continuing to make changes to this proposal. Unfortunately, you're only having 2 meetings this month, and it just happens to be a very unique situation that your last meeting is outside the scope of the 90-day window for this honorable body to act. And so therefore, in accordance with Chapter 48, Section 9, I've asked for an extension and an extension agreement to be executed by the parties for 60 days, will allow us to go back to the St. George, go back to the subcommittee, and as I reported at the zoning subcommittee this evening, we anticipate making material changes that will probably move the building and its relocation along with enhancing the mixed-use aspects of the project. Stan, any questions? Thank you,
Councilors?
ma'am.
Questions? Roll call vote?
In accordance with the provision of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 9, shall the City Council approve an agreement between HR Development LLC and the City Council for a time extension to take action on special permit C-17-17 for 320-329 Revere Beach Boulevard for a period of 60 days from February 25th, 2018. Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Keith?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers?
No.
No. Councilor Rizzo is absent. Counselor Rotundo?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Zambuto?
Yes.
Yes, and Council President Giannino is absent. The motion is approved.
Madam President, as we are under a suspension of rules, may we take this up for reconsideration so that it will not prevail?
Now we're on to the special permit for 540 Revere Beach Boulevard.
Roll call vote?
Roll call on the special permit for Baystone Revere LLC, 540 Revere Beach Boulevard, seeking permission to install a standing accessory sign at 540 Revere Beach Boulevard. Shall the city council grant the relief requested? Counselor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Keith?
No.
No. Counselor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Rizzo is absent. Counselor Rotundo?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Zambuto?
Yes.
Yes, and Council President Giannino is absent. The special permit has been granted.
Suspension of rules, hope will not prevail.
Reconsideration?
We're on to motions. Calendar item number 7, motion presented by Councilor Morabito that the City Council accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 64N, Section 3, as amended by Chapter 55 of the Acts of 2017. The acceptance of this provision imposes a 3% local tax option on marijuana sales. The revenue generated from the local tax option shall be used to fund education on substance abuse and to help with addiction recovery. Further, that in accordance with Condition 10 of Special Permit C-15-12, is a permit for the operation of a medical marijuana treatment center on Lot A at 44 Railroad Street, that when the applicant enters into a host community agreement with the City of Revere, the host community agreement shall include a community impact fee of 3% of gross sales per year for 5 years.
Councilors?
Thank you. Can I speak?
Councilor Morabito, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you, Madam Vice President. Just want to give you a history about why I presented this motion. Obviously, we know a marijuana facility will be coming on Railroad Ave. I was originally thinking of a way we can give back on the education of substance abuse and addiction recovery, because that was everyone's concern in the community. How is this okay? This is a gateway drug. So I feel I originally wanted to take that 3% sales tax that we were allowed to receive and put that revenue that the city gained toward the education of substance abuse and addiction recovery. But in doing this, I discovered that in order for us to do so, we have to adopt this law. And when reading about the law, I realized that it allows us to also extract an additional 3% in host community agreements for a maximum of 5 years. So I think as a city, we should take advantage of this and adopt this law, because it really sweetens the deal for our city and provides education.
Thank you, Councilor Morabito. Any other councilors? Councilor Rotundo?
Thank you. I think this is a great motion. My only concern is, as we obtain this revenue, is, as you state, put it in for education. The question then comes, who do we utilize in order to provide that education? And my concern is with some of the NGOs within the community that have a dual facet approach to this process, and quite frankly, some of them don't have outcomes that are notable. And so if we're going to have education, I want something that is tangible. I don't want to have education that is just for the purposes of a grant. And I've seen that, unfortunately, in the city, and I'm not impressed by it. So with that said, I have great admiration to put in for education I just want to make sure that we give it to the proper group that will actually show me outcomes and give me results. And therefore, I'd like to put in committee and kind of talk about it a little bit further. There are some groups that actually have outcomes and have benchmarks and have proven results. And I'd like to put them forward as part of this process. Otherwise, we're putting it into education, and that could be used for a plethora of different things. And it basically can be for one NGO versus another. And I want it to be merit-based. So I'm for this. I think it's a great motion, and I support it 100%.
Point of information. So just to clarify, so this would go in a marginal fund, which basically the only intent would be for the education of substance abuse and addiction recovery. So we have a SUDI office that we could distribute funds. We could also give it to, we could help North Shore Suffolk Health.
So I'll give you an example. Presently, thank you. Presently, there are groups that have not been able to show me particular outcomes, where you have people that have been sober for 18 months, have re-entered the workforce within a 2-year process, that have had no further interventions within the criminal courts, or for that matter, any interventions as far as being seen in an emergency room for an overdose. I've read pretty much the material that many of these NGOs have here. No one's been able to show me those outcomes. I asked for it. Unfortunately, I was sick that night. Matter of fact, I was in the hospital myself. But I did read the material that they presented. The material that was presented did not provide me those benchmarks, those outcomes, those things that I've asked for. I deal particularly with an emergency room where people have the highest amount of overdoses within the state. So with that said, I don't want the money being splashed on people who are just going to give me, you know, a service of education versus an outcome of education.
Okay, but you do understand that it would be specifically in our marginal fund, and we would only be able to...
I understand that. My point is who
I
gets
just wanted to clarify that. And also, if we pass this law, we're entitled to 3%. So whether you want to put it toward fixing roads or wherever the mayor seems fit to put that 3% in the line item, he can put it in whatever line item of the budget, but I'm saying let's appropriate it, marginal fund, just for education on substance abuse and addiction recovery.
I'm with you on that.
Okay, thank you, councilors. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I certainly support the motion and concept and accepting the state law. I'm sure you're going to send this to my. I'm sure you're going to send this to my subcommittee, Legislative Affairs, and we can discuss the details. And I somewhat agree with merit-based funding. We can dictate where that money goes to, and I would certainly want to see it not in any general fund, but specifically into what we're targeting here. So, but we can work all that out in committee before we go forward with this. But I do appreciate the motion. It's a good motion, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Madam Vice President, this is a great motion. I commend Councilor Morabito for bringing this up. But I just want to bring the attention to all our members that we can still accept this and then still put it in committee to decide where we want the mayor to put it in the budget. So I have no problem accepting this tonight and then putting it into legislative committee and deciding where we're going, because we're not telling them where to put it. We're just accepting it.
I would rather have it in committee and discuss things like how it affects the host community agreement and stuff like that. I don't want to jump the gun here. There's no urgency to do this tonight. We can put it in committee. We can work out the details. I don't see it as a big deal.
Thank you. Point of information. So it would not affect the host community agreement. It would actually be in addition to the host.
I understand. No. I know that part of it.
But I appreciate.
You have both pieces in the motion.
No, I completely understand,
okay, so
and I value both of your opinions, and I think we need some transparency, some discussion, so I don't mind putting it in.
Yeah, and I'd
subcommittee.
certainly like to talk about more
Absolutely.
about these merit-based programs. I'm fairly familiar with this because I've been on the Catholic Board of Directors for 18 years. So we deal with this stuff.
You know, I just think everyone on this council would like further discussion. I think
Great.
everyone can agree
Great.
that
So
we
we're all
want to
agreed.
see that those funds go back into the community for education.
So this will be going to
Yeah.
legislation affairs, am I right?
Thank you.
All right.
Calendar item number 8, motion presented by Councilors Morabito and Keefe that the City Council order the following proposed ordinance to a public hearing. This is an ordinance prohibiting disposable plastic bags.
Councilor Morabito?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Ashley, can I just have you change the description of that motion, strike disposable plastic bags, and write the distribution of plastic shopping bags? I don't want people thinking they have to throw away the Ziploc bags.
Okay, so this would read, an ordinance prohibiting the distribution of single-use disposable plastic shopping bags in the
Correct.
city of Revere.
Correct. So, although plastic bags seem convenient, people take them home within like 12 minutes. What do they do? They put them in a bag, they store them. They don't even use them that long. I remember working at Johnny's Food Master Supermarkets, working in the supermarket industry for 18 years. I remember people would come in, grab a pack of gum, some candy. Yeah, I'll have a bag. They would put 3 little small-sized items in a bag. What would they do? They'd go outside, put it in their pocket, throw the bag, and the bag would go flying in the wind. I think plastic bags in general, plastic shopping bags, are just, they have an environmental negative impact globally. And obviously, it has to start somewhere. And I think cities are already taking the initiative of moving forward and putting plastic bans. It's a start. Plastic bag bans. Just in the production of creating plastic, producing plastic shopping bags, it requires vast amounts of fossil fuel, fresh water. This is resulting in billions of pounds of solid waste. You know, we have people, everyone's in favor of not extending the landfill up in Saugus. Do we realize that all these plastic bags that aren't being recycled, what's happening is they accidentally get burned. You know what's going on in the air? All the toxins from that. So I think in general, I think we have a responsibility to pass this ordinance. And if the clerk can just amend this motion, because along with Councilor Keefe, Councilor McKenna and Janino share the same passion for this. So if you can amend their names onto the motion.
So adding Janino and McKenna to the motion.
Thank you, Councilor Morabito. Councilor Keefe?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I too, like Councilor Morabito, McKenna, and Janino, we all had similar feelings on proposing this plastic ban. Obviously, this is going to go to a public hearing, and we're going to get community input, and then it would go to subsequent subcommittees to be further discussed. I want this to be a community process, but I will speak on what my feelings are. I do believe that they are harmful to the environment, and I think that we have a responsibility to start doing something about it. I think that Massachusetts currently has about close to 30 communities that are going to be adopting a somewhat of a ban on plastic bags.
61.
And it's growing. Revere is a community that's very much one of those that they struggle to adopt certain ordinances like these. We're considered an urban community, and a lot of times these types, they feel like a lower income community isn't able to adopt them for whatever reason. I think that we can send a different message with this council, and the community impact. The community feedback, I'm sure, will be very important in helping us shape whatever this ordinance does if it ever does come to fruition, how we can shape it. And then, so as a consumer, I would be very much in favor of this, and also as a business person, I'm very familiar with this ban, so I'm not just shooting from the hip and saying, oh, you know, put it on the retailer. I'm in 2 communities right now, 2 cities that have this ban in place, and my businesses have switched to the paper bags and have really, there's not a large financial impact, and the guests really have no issues with it. As a matter of fact, they actually kind of like it. And obviously Boston's adopting the ban, so I'll have more businesses that will be impacted by this ban, and we're ready for it. It's not this huge cost that you may think that we are implementing on any business, like I said, as a person that's going through it. But again, we will have lots of community impact, and we'll have lots of feedback from the council and whoever it may be to shape this bill for the best of Revere. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Keefe. Councilor Zambudo?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I'm certainly going to support this going to a public hearing, but I got to clear up a couple of misconceptions here. To start with, my colleague mentioned burning these plastic bags. We know where it goes. Guess what? You don't know where it goes because you don't know the technology. If you did, you know that none of that stuff that comes out of the stack goes into the air because that's why they developed these scrubbers. That's why we have technology today. So you're not getting toxins in the air. But aside from all that stuff, there's consequences for our actions. There's consequences when we write these, what I call feel-good motions and feel-good resolutions that we send off to state agencies to try to prevent something that would be harmful to the taxpayer and stuff. But so there is consequences to a ban on plastic bags. Now, we may decide that we want to face those consequences and we want to pay for those consequences. But you've got to be an informed citizen. You've got to know what you're getting into here. And that's what the process is all about. So that's why I certainly support this going to a public hearing and then probably to my subcommittee, and we'll debate this left and right. And if in the end we decide that we want the consumers to pay more money at the supermarket and, so forth and so on, then we understand the consequences for the actions. And that's what the process is all about. And I'm certainly in favor of that. So let's send it on to a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. Councilor Rotundo?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm for this. For me, this is very simple. I've watched program after program of, Sea Life having problems with plastic bags, considering that we are a community surrounded by water. I think at the very least, that's part of the process. But historically, I go back to remember my grandmother. And I don't remember her having plastic bags, quite frankly. I remember her having paper bags and walking up the street with the paper bags in her hand and the little loop that was made out of a thicker paper product. And I always wondered why we went to plastic, and obviously the issue is probably cost, and the other part of the equation is obviously convenience. But then I take a look at it from a medical standpoint, and you can't tell me that things haven't changed medically with people. I mean, every research that I've read about certain products that are put into containers, that are put into bags, have an effect on us. Even, the cup of coffee that we drink has styrofoam. When it heats up, it releases toxins. So because it's underneath a certain limit, quote, it doesn't affect the body, but quite frankly, I believe it does, and that's just my opinion. When I go to Europe, if you take a look at the way that they have their containers for yogurt and things like that, they're in glass jars. Very few of them are in plastic anymore. And that's because when you heat up the plastic, it releases a chemical that affects your hormones. So, we have to take a look at what science has provided us versus what it has done to us. And there's always a double-edged sword to that. So I look forward to supporting this. I believe it's good for the environment. It might cost a penny more, but I'm pretty sure that people, once they're educated, they'll say, you know what, it's worth it. And anything to conserve is probably better. Some people don't even use plastic bags, or for that matter, paper bags. They go and buy their nice little, bag that they, got a dog face on and put their, their biscuits and what have you, and they walk home with it, Everybody's got their choice, and for me, I'm with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Any other councilors like to speak?
I just wanted to bring up a touch on upon what Councilor Zambuda said about the more cost to the consumer. I know most retailers, that cost that they purchase the bags, plastic bags with, is already included in the cost of the product. They factor that in. And for example, if you have one item, say if you have a package of ink or a 20-ounce bottle, a 16-ounce bottle, a 20-ounce bottle of soda. Cashier says, do you want a bag for that? Most people are like, yeah, it's plastic. They throw it in their plastic bag and carry it around. They look at a paper bag that's about, say, 2 feet high. They say, no, that's okay, I'll just put it in my pocket. I'll just carry it. So businesses are actually reducing their costs because less paper bags would go out. Sure, I know the cost. The difference in price is about 3 cents per bag. But you'd be amazed how many people will get a plastic bag for a minuscule item. So I just want to put that in. But I'm looking forward to discussing this in committee, but I'm in favor. I obviously want to vote on a public hearing tonight. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Morabito. I'd like to say something from the chair. I have some statistics, and I do have some photographs. I don't know if they can come up on the screen. But I'd like to say that over 1 trillion plastic bags are used every year worldwide, considering China, a country of 1.3 billion, which consume 3 billion plastic bags daily. About 1 million plastic bags are used every minute. A single plastic bag can take up to 1,000 years to degrade. More than 3.5 million tons of plastic bags, sacks, and wraps were discarded in 2008. The U.S. goes through 100 billion single-use plastic bags. This costs retailers about $4 billion a year. Plastic bags are the second most common type of ocean refuse after cigarette butts. Plastic bags remain toxic even after they break down. Every square mile of ocean has about 46,000 pieces of plastic floating in it today. I know this might hurt the mom and pop stores. I know, it might cost them a little bit more, but it is very important for us, for our children and their children, to come up with some sort of criteria to ban plastic bags. 61 cities in Massachusetts have already banned plastic bags. We'd be the 62nd city. So I would say to my councilors, this is a very important for the environment, and I would really suggest that you support this. Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Vice President. Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Just want to say, just to touch upon what you said about it being a financial burden on small businesses. In this ordinance, it will also allow small businesses to file for an extension, which will extend it. They won't have to comply for an additional 6 months. On top of that, keep in mind they have the options of getting the heavy-duty plastic, which is made out of a different grade, which is considered reusable, and they can charge for them 10 cents. Also, in terms of supplies, this extension should give them sufficient time to run out of their supply so they're not sitting on any plastic bags, because we understand that businesses might buy in bulk because they get a lower price, but this extension will allow them to run out of their supply as well.
Thank you, Councilor Morabito. So this is ordered to a public hearing on legislature affairs on February 26th.
Excuse me, Madam President, does anyone in the audience want to speak?
Oh, I didn't even ask them. Would anybody like to speak? Sure.
Your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
I'm sure you guys can all hear me anyway, but I'll use the mic. My name's Chris Peronunzi. I'm a long-term resident and homeowner in Revere. I've been working on the proposed bag ban in the city of Revere. I'm an active member of the Revere Beautification Committee. I'm on the RCC. I'm on the Cleanliness Committee as part of that. And one of the key things that people complain about in terms of the city of Revere is the litter. We do cleanups, we do this, we do that, and we're at the point where all these other 61 cities and towns in the state of Massachusetts have already passed such a ban. And it's great for the environment, it's great for the reduction of use of fossil fuels, it's great for all the things that Councilor Rotundo said in terms of the long-term effects of use of plastics. But in particular, I want to remind everyone that litter is a key item that affects quality of life in Revere. I can't tell you how many bags. I've got a number of trees in my yard. Up they go with the wind. And this might seem like a small issue, but it really is key for quality of life in Revere. I fully support it. I have a lot of information. I'm very knowledgeable about it because of my activism. And I would certainly like to participate because I understand a lot of people have questions. People wonder, well, why is this bag different from that bag? There are a lot of solid reasons. As you may know, you can't even put the single-use bags into your recyclables because it screws up the recycling process because that plastic does not meet the standards of the number 2 plastics, the number 4, all the other plastics that you can just put in your recycle bin. The plastic bags do not meet the standard, so they cannot be recycled. The only thing you can do is bring them back to the retailer, Stop and Shop, put them in a bin, and they have to process those separately. So there's a multitude of reasons why we need to consider this, and if I can offer my information and knowledge, councilors,
That'd be
going
wonderful.
forward, I would love to.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak? Okay, so we're going to order this to a public hearing, legislative affairs, on February 26, 2018, with Chairman. Oh, public hearing in front of the council. Okay, thank you.
Calendar item number 9, motion presented by Councilors McKenna and Janino, that the City Council order the following ordinance to a public hearing. An ordinance relative to snow, slush, and ice on sidewalks.
Thank you. I'd like to speak about this. I know my colleague's not here, but it was really disturbing to me, the last snowstorm we had, January 4th. I do believe that this ordinance, do we have a current ordinance? Yes, right? It only concerns commercial, am I right? So it's very lackadaisical. Nothing's being done. And when I hear that children are walking on the street to go to school because sidewalks aren't shoveled, something's wrong. When our high school kids are waiting for the bus on the street because they didn't shovel the sidewalk, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's like pitch dark, something's wrong. So I really do think that we need to crack down on these offenders, commercial and residential. I think everybody should be responsible for their property. I don't care if you make a 3-foot little path, but at least you're shoveling. And I just think that we need to heavily fine these people that aren't shoveling, especially the roadside that are going to schools, because, you know, we don't want a tragedy waiting to happen. So that's why we changed this ordinance. Councilors? Councilor Rotundo, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I can't tell you the amount of text messages I got from my daughter Gabriella during the snowstorms, and my daughter Amanda. Dad, can you believe this? You know, pictures of parts of the sidewalk or the street, for that matter, not plowed. And my daughters are both athletic, and they generally don't complain much, but they thought to rub it into me that it wasn't done. And so I'll be at work, and one after another, I'll get tag teamed by my daughters that the sidewalks aren't plowed or not shoveled and so forth. And I'll pass it up, obviously, to the DPW, and obviously it gets done, sometimes it doesn't. But I think we need to have enforcement, and one of the things I'd like to see, if at all possible, is if during these snowstorms, if we have an issue with the business owner, that we just have the city take the Bobcat and go from one end of Broadway and down the other, and just go on the sidewalks. I mean, the kids that are out in the middle of the street, it's a problem. Someone's gonna get hit, someone's gonna get killed. And maybe the simple solution is at this point asking the DPW, through the DPW subcommittee, to have them designate a Bobcat on both sides of Broadway and just go up and down the street when it's convenient, prior to school. But something has to be done above and beyond the enforcement, because we can enforce it, but at the same time, it's not going to solve the problem. So we fix the problem and we do the enforcement at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Councilor Zambudo?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I certainly support this going to a public hearing, but here again, we've got, when we get to the committee part of this, we'll find out that what do we do about our seniors? I mean, you know, there's consequences for your actions. We do have the snow angels from the ROTC, but there's a waiting list of hundreds to be on that. So when you do something like this, you've got to be mindful of who we're going to hurt with this. The person, listen, the able-bodied people, I want to go after them. I want them to clean the sidewalk. But I don't want to be finding my seniors that can barely get by financially, but also physically.
Point of information.
So there's consequences for everything we do up here. These things have to be taken into consideration.
So
That
there is an
being said,
exempt.
I'm certainly in favor of doing this in a targeted way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you read the ordinance, the new ordinance, there is an exemption for senior citizens. So that's already taken care of.
Great.
Anybody, any other councilors? Councilor Morabito?
I understand the sentiment of this motion and the intent to clear up the roads, kids walk to school, people need to get on with their lives. And I'm for putting this forward to a public hearing. My only concern is 3 hours. If you have a blizzard or if you have a drastic snowstorm, say if the landlord does not live at his house, he has to clean out his house, and then in order to get out his car and then go to another property. So I think being logical, the size of the property, we had to get 3 hours. I think it's an excellent motion. My only bicker about this whole motion would be the time frame, 3 hours. And I'd like to discuss that further.
So, Counselor, to your point, we can change it to 24 hours. I mean, it's flexible. It's going into a public hearing,
Yeah,
so we can...
absolutely. But as I said, I'm for a public hearing. That's the only gripe I have with it, the amount of hours.
Okay.
Madam President? If I may have
Counselor
a moment.
Rotundo? Sure.
One of the things that I would ask for, into conceptualizing both Councilor Zambudo and Councilor Morabito's commentary, is that perhaps that we, along with the 311, when these things take place, that we send out a robocall to our seniors and those in the city saying, listen, if you're having a hard time with this, please contact us. And then maybe we can start getting a pool. Listen, we've got a lot of children that need to have community service done. And, you know, they're vetted to some degree. My thought is let's work with the schools and let's work with 311 and kind of come up with a happy medium where these people call into the system and saying, okay, they need help with the shoveling. Now, we've got a group, you know, beside the cadre within the ROTC, we have a group of kids that are within the high school that need their community service. Let's put them to work as well. You know, I mean, I can't see how we have a limited pool of children and a limited need of our seniors. Why can't we just, you know, work together to get that accomplished? I mean, this is a perfect interface that we can make happen.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Any other councilors wishing to speak? So this is ordered to a public hearing on February 26, 2018.
What committees are on it?
I don't know.
Public hearing.
Public Works?
It's a public hearing.
Public Works.
No, it's not, public hearing.
Public Works.
Public Works. So,
It's going to the public hearing first.
okay. So it's going into a public hearing.
Calendar item number 10, motion presented by Councilor Novoselsky, that the mayor provide an accounting of the list of sidewalk repairs approved by the city council last year in the amount of $200,000. The accounting shall include the complete list of locations of potential sidewalks to be repaired, the locations of sidewalks repaired, and the amount of money spent as of this date, February 1st, 2018.
Councilor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Madam Vice President, I put this in based on what's been going on with our sidewalk repairs. Last year, we appropriated $200,000 for, to clean up a lot of the requests that we, as city councilors, put in from around the city. And I would think, you know, a lot of them were basically 6 wards. And I would think that each ward would get an equal amount of money to do sidewalks. Well, I've only had 3 sidewalks done since this was done. And there were maybe 4 or 5 others that were marked and not done. But even 7 squares that were requested is not a third of approximately $60,000. And I have a problem with that. And I've put my issue to the mayor's staff, and I just wanted to put it in writing to let my folks know that, you know, I've been trying to do your sidewalks, but they just didn't do them. Now, hopefully, I can get this list. We know that everybody's going to get their equal share. And that's what I'm looking for. So, thank you very much.
Any other councilors? Thank you. Any other councilors? Councilor Rotundo?
I totally agree with Ira on this, and that tells you something. Me and Ira don't normally agree on much, but this is one of the things that we agree on. I got friends on Tapley Avenue as well as in other parts of the city, and, you know, looking at those streets, they didn't seem to meet the need that is required up in Ira's neighborhood. So I think we need to have an accounting of these sidewalks and see if maybe one is being put before the other. And maybe there's a reason for it, maybe there isn't, but at least we should get some answers. Thank you.
Any other councilors? I think this is great motion, and I would like to see it in my ward, too. So, all in favor, all opposed, so ordered.
Calendar item number 11, motion presented by Councilor Novoselsky, that the mayor include in the FY19 funding the installation of handicap crosswalk ramps on Elliott Road at the intersections of Porter Ave, Garfield Ave, Curtis Road, and Clark Road. There are many elderly and handicapped residents on Elliott Road and homes and at the Revere Housing Authority facility that have difficulty crossing at the intersections.
Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Madam Vice President, again, based on what I've seen in my neighborhoods, especially around the Garfield School and around the Revere Housing Authority facility on Garfield Ave and Elliott Road, I see it as an issue. We just made one-way streets on Standish Road, Elliott Road. A lot of the people that live in the neighborhood have to walk on the street because cars are parked on the sidewalks. And trying to worry about cars going in 2 directions, we made it one way. But we still want to be able to have them get off the sidewalks as much as possible where they can, and use these handicap ramps going from the sidewalk onto the roadway so they can cross the street appropriately and safely. So I would hope that we can do this and find the money and get this done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Novoselsky. I'd just like to say that putting cars on the sidewalks, they crack, the sidewalks get ruined because you have a ton of weight on the sidewalk. So that's another great reason why we shouldn't be parking on sidewalks. So. Thank you. Just state your name, please.
103 Elliott, Robert Bent, 103 Elliott Road. First of all, I'd like to thank Councilor Novakowski on this motion. Being on Elliott Road, being in a wheelchair, I can tell you firsthand how hard it is to move around on the sidewalks with them being cracked, with the curb cuts not being done correctly. Something definitely needs to be done. It's a great motion, and I would really like to see it, passed and something be done. And not only in our ward, but in this, like you just said a minute ago, Councilor, the other wards that need to be done too.
Right.
So it's a great motion. And again, thank you, Ira.
Thank you, Robert. All in any other councilors? All in favor? All opposed? So ordered?
Council Vice President McKenna, the next two motions are submitted by Councilor Rizzo, and he's absent today.
Yes, so Councilor Rizzo would like to hold all of tonight's motions except for the emergency one, so he can speak on the motions next week, February, in 2 weeks, I'm sorry.
Madam President?
Yes.
In the interim, respecting Councilor Rizzo's request, and obviously, hopefully you can forward this, but I am highly interested in getting some validated information from the elections office right now regarding the age and compliance of, if we can get One Beach Street's a full printout of the census for that particular property and have that disseminated to the council. I'm highly concerned about the way that they went about this. Remembering how hundreds of Revere residents who met the requirement, then for it only to be expanded into people outside of the city of Revere, into the several hundred realm, and then for that matter, it to then negate the people based upon certain criteria that was placed thereafter. I'm just going based upon the time that they came before the council in which they spoke, and quite frankly, I was pretty disturbed by it. And my comments in thereof are reflective of what took place at that meeting. So if we could get that information, I'd like it. I'd also like to know if they're in compliance within the edict of the law. They're supposed to have certain economic criteria that they're supposed to meet. And I'd like to see if they're doing that. I have asked that in prior motions, so if we could at the very least get something from the city elections office, or Diane Colella, as far as the census, that would be great, and we could find out if they're in compliance accordingly, instead of just coming to the board with no information.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Councilor Keefe?
Madam Vice President, so with Councilor Rotundo's request, would it behoove us just to take up motion 13, 18041? And it sounds like he's going to be able to speak on it without Councilor Rizzo here, and I think it would probably move things along more quickly. Correct?
Council, to your answer, he asked, he emailed and asked that we would hold his motions for when he could speak on them himself. So I would like to respect his request and wait, but we could put,
I'm just asking for information.
we could do a separate oral motion for your...
You know what, I'll just ask, strike that, I'll go and speak to the clerk myself.
Right, but I'm gonna respect and wait for him to be here.
I agree. I have a lot to say on this motion, but I'm not going to say it tonight.
Okay.
Trust me.
Okay, so, all in favor? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
There's not.
We'll table it, sorry,
Tabling.
sorry. It's my inexperience.
Doing great.
So Council Vice President McKenna, calendar items number 12 and 13 are being held over. So we're moving on to calendar item number 14. Motion presented by Councilor Powers that the mayor request the owners or their representatives of Wonderland to come before the city council to discuss the following. 1, why has the demolition of Wonderland Park ceased? 2, with regards to several piles of rubble in the parking lot, is there any contaminated material? 3, when will the broken glass in the grandstand and clubhouse be removed, which constitutes a danger to the public? And 4, when will the demolition be completed?
Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Madam President. I go by there every day, as most people in the area do. And to see those pieces of broken glass, plate glass as it is, which is very heavy, sitting there unsecured or secured only by some trim around the edges of them. And then you hear on the news at night, well, there's going to be a 60, 70 mile an hour wind. And I wonder how sturdy they are. I wonder if it would be possible for a piece of that glass to blow out onto VFW Parkway, maybe hit a car or hit somebody coming out of the 99 restaurant. I wonder why the demolition is stopped down there. Now, I heard something just this evening. And what I heard was that they found contaminated material in there, and the DEP has fined them $400,000. Now, that seems like a lot of money, and I don't know if it's true. But there has to be, some substance to it. And if that is in fact the case, they have 3 or 4 piles of rubble sitting in the parking lot that once the March winds start coming, that stuff could be blowing all over the neighborhood and all over the area down there. Obviously, it's true because you would think at this point here, they would have removed it from there, knowing that the council isn't really that happy with them. So I would say that it's probably there because they can't remove it. They have an order from the DEP. And if that is in fact the case, cover it. Get some tops and cover that over so it doesn't blow around. And third thing is that they were up here, we're back to the cars again. They were up here before the ZBA last week, and they were looking for a third continuance to park cars there, continuance that they filed against the building inspector's order to take those cars out of there. And now they're appearing it to Superior Court, which I knew they would. But it's been 2 or 3 continuances before it's getting to Superior Court. That's the problem. Now, the people that live down there in that area, myself included, have a right to feel that they're protected down there environmentally, and that would include noise from those horns blowing at night, people coming in and out of there, dropping cars off. There was an accident down there, and I have a copy of the accident report right here, where a car with a manager in it from one of the rent-a-car companies and 2 drivers that he was dropping off there to bring cars back, coming through Butler Circle, there was an accident, there was an injury down there. So I would like to see these individuals up here before the city council and give us some answers to the questions. I think the time for patience and delay has passed. It's long gone. They need to get busy down there, or if they can't, if they're under court orders from the DEP or something like that, let us know. We have a right to know. And we have a right to know what their intentions are when they're going to get those cars out of there. The city's not getting 10 cents from those cars being parked there. And that's a sad thing, because certainly if they were going to be parking cars there with an agreement from the city, which expired in June of 2015, then the city should be getting some mitigation money to maybe do some streets and sidewalks that we need to do. So that's my feeling on that. I'd like to see them up first ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. Councilor Rotundo?
Thank you. I think we need to rezone and take a look at that area, to be quite honest with you. we need to start thinking forward about the development of Wonderland Dog Track, instead of it just being an idle piece of parking. So I'm going to probably present, just to let the council know, some novel pieces within the next couple of weeks, and I hope I have your support, Council Powers, if they fit you well. And if they want to continue to be a parking lot, so be it. They can be a parking lot, and the zoning will meet that need. However, if they wish to do something in the future, the zoning is going to make it very arduous for them to do what they need to do. So I'm hoping that someone's listening, whether it be the mayor's office or somebody else, but at the end of the day, we control the zoning up here. We control what they do up here. So either they get their shit together or not. And I'm sick of it. Excuse my language, but I'm just sick of this. This has been for 3 years now that this has been an abomination. Enough is enough. When are we gonna stop taking it on the chin? I'm sick of it. I am absolutely sick of it. We all up here talk and talk and talk, and nothing gets done. So either we have to take some really serious measures, or just shut up about the whole issue. I'm just sick of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Councilor Powers?
Point of information, we did get something done. It was started down there. We have the clubhouse gone, the administration building is gone, that dog kennel is gone, and then for all of a sudden they stopped. Now, they're realizing approximately $300,000 to $400,000 a year down there from the rental car companies just for storing cars. My feeling is if they're going to do that, first of all, the zoning is not in place for them to do that. They need a commercial parking lot license. The cars they were parking there prior to that were accessory use to Wonderland Park, which is no longer there, doesn't exist anymore. They need a special permit from this city council, and then when they get the special permit, they need to go to the licensing board and get a license to park the cars. So that's my feeling on it. It's a sad thing when people are just flagrantly, violating the law in this city.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. I think you're right about this. I think they've been getting away with it for a long time, and I think something should be done. So I think, to Councilor Rotundo's point, I think it's a good point. So, all in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 15 is also a motion by Councilor Rizzo. Hold that over.
Yes.
Calendar item 16 is also a motion by Councilors Rizzo and Novoselsky. Calendar item number 17, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the proposed zoning amendment for the Suffolk Downs Overlay District include a condition for a 15% inclusionary zoning for affordable housing.
Councilor Rotundo?
Thank you. They're talking about 3,000 units down at Suffolk Downs, and quite frankly, as this envelops to a bigger project and it's going to be phased out, I'd like to engage with the developer about thinking about inclusionary zoning in particular, whether it be 55 and older, senior, or for that matter, affordable rental, affordable housing. I know on the Boston side, there's a compliance that they have to have. I can't see, as we build these types of projects for the city of Revere, one of the major issues that I deal with is people not being able to afford the rent. In fact, this goes back to 1 Beach Street and other places within the city of Revere. People are having a harder and harder time in order to basically live in the city that they were raised in. And if we can do something to help these people, that would be great. This is something that I think we should be able to talk with the developer about. Nothing's cast in stone here. And, I just look forward to a conversation.
Councilor Keefe? Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Councilor Keefe?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I think Councilor Rotundo might be onto something here. I'm certain that there'd be good conversation to be had with the number of developments that are going to happen in Suffolk Downs. And if we're able to do something to assist the residents of Revere, certainly the ones, the seniors, veterans, and people of need, I think that would be something that we should definitely talk about.
Thank you, Councilor Keefe. Any other councilors? Councilor Zambudo?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Again, here's the thing I need a lot more
I need a lot more information about before I support something like this. We're working with this developer to end up with the, what we consider the perfect thing for Revere here. So I don't want to willy-nilly throw a wrench into what our relationship here. So I'm open for the discussion.
But, you know, through you, Madam President, to you, Tony, that's exactly what I'm looking to do with the developer. In particular, my angst is 55 and older, veterans housing, things of that nature.
I'd certainly work discussion, but I don't want to start.
Put the cart before the horse.
Well, and you know, this is an important development, and it's an important developer, and we want the best out of this thing, and we don't want to take quick shots. If in the end this fits into this beautiful development that I envision over there, and I'm only fantasizing at this point because nothing's etched in stone, but
Well, the other thing is
I agree with your concept.
credits and things of that nature.
Thank you, councilors. We're going to refer this to the zoning subcommittee.
Calendar item number 18, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the following special legislation be approved. An act relative to the tenure of office of the city clerk of the city of Revere, being enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives in general court assembled, and by the authority of the same as follows. Section 1, notwithstanding Section 12 of Chapter 41 or Section 18 of Chapter 43 of the general laws, the city clerk of the city of Revere, at the time this act takes effect, shall hold office continuously until a vacancy occurs by death, resignation, or retirement. The city council shall remove her only in the case of just cause in accordance with the provisions of Section 41 of Chapter 31 of the general laws. Section 2, any vacancy occurring shall cause this act to be repealed. The vacancy shall be filled by the city council pursuant to Section 18 of Chapter 43 of the general laws. In Section 3, this act shall take effect upon its passage.
Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, Madam President. To me, the very aspect of government that comes in the triennial approach, obviously we have the council here, which acts as the congressional body, so to speak, and then there obviously the presidential. But for me, the clerk is more of a kind of a judicial quasi other body, where I believe it needs to be separate and above any type of influenced by any group, and I believe by giving tenure that we will allow that to take place, and it allows a standalone system. So as far as I'm concerned, I would like the clerk's seat to be a tenured seat, and basically that upon her retirement, or his retirement if that would be, but in this case hers, that clearly the act would be repealed and we could look at the next candidate accordingly. But for the most part, I've always believed and continue to believe that city clerk's position, like throughout the remainder of the Commonwealth, should be a tenured position.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Any other councilors?
I think,
Councilor Keefe?
thank you, Madam Vice President. I wholeheartedly agree, and I think it's a great, I think that we've already discussed this, but it's great to put this forth, and I'll be in favor of this tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Keefe. Any other councilors? So I'd like to read, I got a comment from Jessica Janino in her sickbed tonight, and I'm going to read it to you all. I fully support this motion. Ashley is an asset to the council and to City Hall. This is not a position that anyone could fill. It takes years of learning and research to be as educated as Ashley is on the ins and outs of city government. We are lucky to have a professional as dedicated and educated as Ashley. Thank you. Road call?
On the special legislation, Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Keefe?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rizzo is absent. Councilor Rotundo?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And Council President Janino is absent. The special legislation will be forwarded. Thank you. Thank you, councilors.
Congratulations, Ashley.
Well deserved.
Can we suspend rules?
take up reconsideration. Hope it does not prevail. Thank you.
Calendar item number 19, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the City of Revere look into the feasibility of building a new Revere High School in the Coolidge Street projects while simultaneously building apartment-style housing for current and future residents.
Counselor Rotundo?
Just floating an idea. I know that they've been looking for a place to put the school, and just looking at our available land assets and looking how other communities have done this throughout the country. And I came across, I think it was in California, where they actually removed part of the public housing and put a high school or a school where that public housing was, and then raised another part of the land for people to actually live there. So we're very limited in space, and at the end of the day, I know what the cost of a new high school would be, and quite frankly, some of the housing down there on Coolidge Street and in that area, that some of it needs to be, redone at the very least, and they're very, very old. Same thing with some of the properties that are down in Ira's neighborhood that need to be redone too. So perhaps there's some thought in that, and that's pretty much just forwarding the idea.
Thank you, Counselor Rotundo. I don't know if anybody has seen the new housing projects going up in East Boston, Orient Heights, but what they've done is they've taken these very old housing projects, and they've made them into they look like townhouses.
Yep.
So I don't know if anybody has seen that, but it's in process, so if you want to go down and see them, they're beautiful. Counselor Guanasso.
Madam Chairperson, I would respectfully submit that this should go to a subcommittee for further debate and concern and input, and my initial reaction is absolutely not, but I would suggest that conversation is needed on this and required. This is a very broad statement. I respect Councilor Rotundo's wishes to do something to get some sort of a new school in place, but I also suggest strongly that we know we're talking years and years away before we can afford a new high school. So I would ask that this go in a subcommittee, whatever one you choose.
Thank you, Counselor Guanasso. Counselor Zambudo.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I agree with my colleague from Ward 3. Again, where's the money for the study? There's a lot of things to discuss, starting with the basic part of who's funding this thing. And again, it's an idea, but it appears to be a far-fetched idea. And the piece in East Boston is quite a bit more land than we're talking about here. It's a whole, anyhow, and they're not putting a high school there, by the way. They took down those old brick buildings, and it looks nice what they're building, but I think we're talking, that's why I'm worried about who would even fund the study, because it seems so far-fetched to me to take that neighborhood and put a high school there. Forget the traffic impacts, but there's a whole, what do you do with the people? And anyhow, I'm certainly willing to discuss this in committee, and whatever committee you decide to put it in, zoning or whatever. I'm all for discussion.
Thank you, Counselor Zambudo. Counselor Morabito.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I echo the same thoughts of my colleagues about putting this in subcommittee. I feel I have a lot of questions, a lot of state versus city questions, relocation questions. Where are the people going to be put if they build? Is there enough size? Is the lot large enough to build? Also, whether or not the people of that area would want to be displaced if they've been living there for 8 years, 10 years. So I think there's a lot of conversation that needs to be.
Thank you, Counselor Morabito. Counselor Rotundo?
Sure. I mean, this is thinking out of the box. And I know it's hard for some to see it, but at the end of the day, the area, if you go on Google Maps and you measure it, you'll see that there's well over 20 acres of land down there. More importantly, if you take a look at the perspectives that we have in front of us on a monthly basis, in particular, we just had the beach house before us. It's on a 1.3 acre piece of property, maybe a little bit bigger than that, and it has several hundred units there. The Hyman Towers is on less space than that project and house more people. Now, if you take a look at how many people are down within the Coolidge Street area, the number of people down there are actually less than what you have at the Hyman Towers. So you're amortizing upwards in order to put people in a more dense area. More handicapped people that have problems, less issue as far as people having to shovel in front of their house. There's a whole other, plethora of things that go into it, but at the end of the day, it comes down to economics. And we do need to revitalize our housing stock here within the city. They do have a schedule in which they have to follow. That's a different set of money that comes out of, I believe, a federal fund, not a city fund or a state fund. More importantly, the school we have to build. We're talking about $200 million property that we have to build, whether it be now or later, and that could be even more. The question is, where do we find the land? We're a land-poor community, so where do we go? We only have land in several places, recreational areas and over there at housing. So where do you put it? Now, if anybody can find a different place for me, I'd like to know. Gibson Park? Fredericks Park? Ambrose? Small. Can't do it. Problems with parking, problems with flooding. So if anybody can come up with a better solution, put it on the table. If you're not willing to think about it, so be it. But do your homework. Land area, well over 20 acres. New school is 10 acres. If you're telling me you can't put 3,000 units inside of a 10-acre area, you're wrong. You can. Just go up to Overlook Ridge. And they're at 6 stories, 5 stories. Not like at the Hyman Towers, which I believe is, 14 stories? So, think about it. At the end of the day, I'm just floating an idea, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, so be it.
Can I just state a point?
Exactly.
And I appreciate Councilor Rotundo, and he's thinking forward. It's better to be proactive, and come up with some solutions. But the Revere City High School is 16 acres, and for another 20 acres, I don't think would be sufficient if we had a field, and also if we built another development for affordable housing. I just think it would be very condensed.
That's just a talk.
Thank you, Councilor Morabito.
We'll-
Thank you, Councilor Morabito. Councilor Keefe?
Thank you, Madam President. I'll make it brief. Once again, I appreciate Councilor Rotundo's ideas. I mean, I'm not going to criticize you, but I do feel they're a little lofty. My idea, and I've brought this up before because you asked if anyone else had any great ideas, was to go into the parking area and the baseball field that currently is next to the school, build a school up there, tear down the school next to it, just like they did in Winthrop and they've done in many other communities. That would house the current footprint that would be needed would be very similar, maybe even having to push off onto the turf field that's over there. But at least it'd be a swap. There wouldn't be this huge relocation cost and obviously building new housing. But again, these are all far-fetched ideas.
Right.
The biggest point that I think we can all agree on in this council is we do want to look at building a new high school at some point. And when that process, we've already started that process, and hopefully the smarter people, maybe even outside of this room, can think of the best area to have it put.
Thank you, Councilor Keefe. So this is going into Ways and Means Subcommittee. All in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 20, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the City of Revere conduct a community health assessment. The objective of this assessment is to determine the various types of illnesses our community faces. Additionally, that this health survey take into account citizens receiving home care and medical calls in the city over a one-year period. This survey should be broken down by adult and pediatric.
Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, and obviously this would be voluntary, and it would be conducted by people that would, adhere to HIPAA accordingly. And quite frankly, I think it's needed. We should really have an understanding of the health of our community. And part of it is obviously the health regarding addiction. And that's one of the major issues that this community faces, and the more that we can understand that, the better we can help the people in our community. The other part of it is taking a look in Ward 5 and those areas in Ward 6 that are affected by, you know, basically asthma or other issues. I honestly believe that our community has a greater amount of cancer and asthma than most communities, and being able to present this to the state might be able to allow us to get greater funding in certain areas. So at the very least, I'd like to look at this accordingly.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Any other councilors? Councilor Zambudo.
Again, I think I took this up for my colleague, even though I disagree with it. Well, maybe I don't disagree with it. I want to know who's going to pay for the study.
I mean, with all due respect, this is a simple survey. It can be done online. It can be done using paper. It's a pretty simple thing. And I'd like to work with, you know, Carol Donovan. I mean, it's pretty simple.
There's a mass health study that's coming out soon. And it will tell you.
It will do nothing that's relevant to the city of Revere. It'll only give you the number of
Exactly the area.
Okay, thank you, councilors. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Vice President, it's a good idea, but not only does Councilor Rotundo want to work with Carol Donovan, our nurse, but do you expect her to write the questions, put it on the computer, and so allow, I don't know if she's capable of doing that. I don't know. And also, why can't we ask Mass General Revere or CHA to join hands and let them do it? So I think we ought to put this in the Public Safety Committee, talk about it and see which way we want to go.
Yes.
Through you, Madam President, I'm totally in agreement with you, Councilor Novoselsky. I've got no problem actually helping formulate the questions, basically off of other communities. I've done very similar. But I do agree. If we could get Mass General, for that matter, Cambridge Health Alliance, you know, this is their community too, so clearly this would help us. It would also help with their community outreach efforts too. So I'm all for it, but I'm going to speak with Carol Donovan hereafter, but more importantly, to see if we can engage those people as well. And
Madam Vice President, can we also add North Suffolk Mental Health Group?
North
into it?
Suffolk Mental Health, yes. So this is going into public safety?
And through you, Madam President, that's where I think some of that 3% that our friend Steve Moravito had put forward could come into play. You know, this is part of it. You gotta find out what the issue is and then utilize that money in order to target the needs.
Thank you, Councilor.
Can I just, I'm not sure, I know we can get some broad information if you go on the Health and Human Services page. But I think you want more detailed, right?
Correct. Very much what they did in Saugus, very much what they did in Winthrop.
All in favor? All opposed? So ordered? No? Oh, I'm sorry. So it's going to public safety.
Calendar item number 21, motion presented by Councilors McKenna, Patch, and Keith, that the mayor contact Mass DOT to request the installation of sound barriers along Route 1 between Route 16 and Copeland Circle. Commuters during the work week utilize Route 1 from points north of Boston, Route 128, and I-95, causing a regional traffic problem that directly impacts the quality of life of Revere residents. Councilor Zambudo is recused from this motion.
Thank you. I put this motion in with Councilor Patch and Councilor Keefe because of the fact that we have a major traffic jam on Route 1, and it's affecting, we have no trees or foliage or anything for these poor residents that abut Route 1. It's terrible. They're inundated with noise, exhaustion, pollution, and it's not right. I know Councilor Patch will speak next, but he did put a motion in 2011, and it got canned. So I just think that this is something for consideration in the future, soon. And I think I think the DOT should really respond to this. Thank you. Councilor Patch?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. You're correct.
Bless you.
Actually, in October of 2011, I put along with Councilor Haas, we put in a motion that the mayor request the Department of Transportation to move ahead and construct a sound barrier from Copeland Circle to exit for Route 16, the ease of noise for the residents in the area. The issue has been addressed many times in the past with no results. What happened, it went to, at the time, the Mayor Ambasino in November, he sent off a letter to the MassDOT, and he got a response, one response from MassDOT at November 1st of 2011, and then they sent them off to another department in MassDOT, and he got not such a good letter back from them at November 15th. And they basically said that our historical traffic data shows the interstate highways where the greatest traffic volume on the high speeds, therefore have the greatest noise impact. At a conclusion of the study, a list of 53 priority sites were established based primarily on the noise levels. Unfortunately, neighborhoods along this section of Route 1 did not qualify for the inclusion on the priority list because Route 1 is not an interstate highway. So, then, in the answer to that, I put another motion in November 21st, despite the fact that Route 1 is used by a massive volume of commuters during the work week as a direct route to points north of Boston, Route 128 and 95. Properties that directly abut Route 1 in the area have virtually no protection for the noise generated for the traffic volume and traffic speed. And that was sent to the communication to the acting chief engineer of MassDOT, and concerning his letter about not being able to qualify for a noise abatement program. So, as a result of this motion, our good clerk, Ashley Melwick, sent a letter into on November 22nd to the Speaker of the House, Senator Anthony, at the time, Anthony Petroselli, Representative Kathy Ann Einstein, and Senator Sal DiDomenico. And that's where it ended. So, if they couldn't get us there, any barriers, because they're saying that Route 1 is not an interstate highway, which I find ridiculous. But, so, in order, we might want to amend this, I would suggest we amend this motion that we then again request for a study, a noise, maybe abatement study, so that we can, maybe those 53 cities of like Linfield and Weston and, you know, they could get sound barriers for their $1 million houses, but we on Revere and along my colleague in Ward 4 and Ward 6, that we could, maybe they've changed the rules since then, I don't know, but maybe it's worth another try. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. Councilor Keefe?
Well, thank you, Madam Vice President. I echo the same sentiment as Councilor Patch. You tend to see sound barriers in more affluent communities, and typically the cities like Revere get left out in the cold. So, you know, certainly I know that we're not able to, the administration isn't really able to do much about this, but we could champion our local delegation and representatives of the State House to help us out with this. I would certainly be in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Keefe. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Madam Vice President, I remember Councilor Patch doing this. Matter of fact, I think it was one of the first year that you came onto the council. We were talking about Overlook Ridge. Excuse me. We had Representative Donato here from Medford, Malden area. And we said to him, you know, we'd like to get some sound barriers from Copeland Circle down to Sergeant Street. And I remember distinctly sitting in this hall, in this council chamber, talking to him about that, and he says, we can make that happen. Now, over the years, you know, we've gotten the shaft of widening Route 1 already. We got the shaft from Overlook by not having a hotel put up there like they promised.
Yep.
And, you know, I'm tired of that. Like Councilor Rotundo is tired of a lot of things. I'm tired of that, and I'm here to support Councilor Patch and Councilor Rotundo and Councilor McKenna 1,000% on this. And may I also say that although Route 1 may not be an interstate, it is a major state highway, and we do have the heaviest volume now since we first spoke about that. And also, I wonder, how come Saugus High School got a nice sound barrier for their ball field, and we can't get it for our residents? Now, I would like to include, as Councilor Keefe said, a state delegation for assistance, but also our federal delegation, our congressional delegation, and see if we can get some federal monies to help make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Just a point of information, Madam
State your point.
You're right, Counselor, that actually was a different motion. That was more or less concerning the, extending the Route 1, which would solve some of the problem, a lot of the problem. But now they just came out with a study that they're not going to do anything on extending a lane until, like, I believe the year is 2034, I read on an article.
We won't be here.
So it's just, they just keep throwing us in the gutter. I don't know. We should get more respect from the state and the federal government. So that's good adding the federal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. Councilor Rotundo?
Thank you. One of the things about having people in power at the State House is their ability to exact influence on situations. Everyone here can agree that Copeland Circle is probably one of the most prone. In fact, I believe I've heard several times on various programs, both on TV as well as at the state level, that Copeland Circle is one of the most dangerous circles in order to traverse within the state. Now, if that is the case, then clearly having at least the environmental justice that other communities have, like Chelsea, like Lynn, for that matter, Boxford, why can't we in Revere? We have the Speaker of the House who works dutifully for us, and now we have the Chairman of Transportation, I believe, Senator Boncory. So it would be my hope that they would be able to exert their influence in order to help the people that they represent. They've done it in the past. I can't see why they can't do it today. So with that said, I'm for this 110%. This is something I believe that, Charlie, I believe you've beaten like a dead horse, and at this point I think we continue to beat this as a dead horse, but hopefully sooner or later they listen, because we deserve the justice that other communities have, and this is a very simple fix. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. So, all in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 22, motion presented by Councilors Patch and McKenna that the mayor requests Mass DOT to clean Route 1 from Asti Ave to Copeland Circle. The amount of litter on this stretch of highway is an eyesore and affects the quality of life of residents who own property bordering this stretch of state highway. Councilor Zambudo is recused from this motion.
Councilor Patch?
Again, thank you, Madam Vice President. I mean, everybody cuts through on Asti Ave, and they must say, wow, what a disgrace, because it's just terrible. I mean, all kind of garbage along the side of the road, and that's on the other side of the fence. We have our prisoner crews clean up Ashley Ave on our side of the fence. I don't know why they can't clean their side of the fence. It's much more of an eyesore than what we clean. So, that's why I'm putting this motion. Hopefully they'll do something this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. I'd just like to add that most of that litter is plastic bags. Thank you.
Good point,
All in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 23, motion presented by Councilors McKenna, Novoselsky, and Powers, that the City of Revere establish an evacuation plan for Revere Beach Boulevard. The current plan on file with the fire department is outdated and does not take into account any of the new and future development occurring on the boulevard.
Thank you. We put this motion in because we found out that there really isn't an evacuation route. I guess it's very old. It doesn't, it really doesn't, it's not updated. It doesn't have any of what, the new development in it. And there's only two ways to get in and out of the Revere Beach. It's Lynn and Revere Street. So, and what?
The ocean.
And the ocean. But anyways, we put this motion in so we can establish an evacuation route just in case there is a, you know, a tragedy or a fire or anything. I'd like also Councilor Novoselsky and Councilor Powers to speak on this, so we'll start with Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I had mentioned to you that we really didn't have an evacuation plan. Many years ago, when we had civil defense rather than emergency management, the city of Boston established a evacuation route down Bennington Street into Revere, and it stopped. There's something happened with, you know, with Chief Doherty at the time, and I don't know exactly what it was, but we never established our evacuation plan in case something happens in Boston or East Boston or Chelsea with some of the tanks and the gasoline and oil tanks. So as far as I'm concerned, we don't have one, and we never had one. And maybe it's time we do have one, especially in consideration of what's happening with our developments in the city. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for working that out.
Thank you. Councilor Powers?
Thank you, Madam President. As you know, just for the edification of the people that live in the Buena Pines and the Boulevard and other areas of the city, we had a meeting last week with representatives from DCR and a traffic engineer. And I think it was all agreed that he would be back before the council and the mayor with some sort of a traffic model, maybe a couple of them showing different options that we would have, so we would be able to move traffic along more freely. And I think an evacuation plan is fine, but I think the other part of that should be too, how do we get emergency equipment to people that live in those buildings down there in the event of a serious fire? As I've said so many times before, fire in Beachmont, fire up on Ward 2, engine 1, ladder 1 go, engine 5 goes down on Freeman Street, and engine 4 goes on Broadway. All you've got left covering the city is a pump in North Revere and a ladder truck, which is very cumbersome to get down there, especially during heavy traffic or bad weather, ladder truck off of Broadway. So you don't really have much of an option here. So I think the traffic study and some type of a model that would show us how to mitigate backups more quickly and more efficiently is something that's long overdue. And again, I think the other thing that's long overdue is something happening with that fire station down on the Point of Pines, because you've got all of this new development going there. And this just isn't for the Point, not for the Point of Pines alone. It's not for Riverside. It's not for Oak Island. It affects the entire eastern side of this city, whether it's Beachmont, Ward 2, or Ward 5, and parts of Ward 3 even. So it's very important that this happen, and I think it will be happening soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. One of my grave concerns is considering the amount of elderly east of North Shore Road. There's probably well over 5,000 people that fit this criteria. And, yeah, correct, John, at least. And, you know, one of the things that troubles me is how do we evacuate them in these situations, whether it be from the Dolphin Towers, Hyman Towers, et cetera. If we can incorporate part of that into that process after you deal with the traffic issue, to get into that phase of it. That to me is one of the biggest problems I think we face as a community. What happens if we have an MCI, mass casualty incident? What happens, you know, if we have a house fire, for example, like we did on Shirley Avenue, where the top floor had 13 people in it and 46 people possibly displaced. So how do we deal with these, you know, as a community, and more importantly, how do we get that information out to our community on how to respond when these things take place? So the other part of the equation that I'd like to talk about is also the issue of traffic as it currently stands. I understand we've got a traffic engineer looking at the eastern part of the city per se, but please don't neglect the western part. I mean, Broadway is just as bottlenecked as North Shore Road is, or for that matter, Revere Beach Boulevard during the early parts of the morning, or for that matter, the later parts at night. So, through this body to the mayor who's probably listening, you know, if we could incorporate the western part of the city as well, that would be great, because quite frankly, whatever happens on the eastern part causes congestion on the western part as people try to circumvent the various roadways. And I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 24, motion presented by Councilors McKenna, Novoselsky, and Powers, that the mayor request the DCR to amend the parking regulations on Ocean Avenue and Revere Beach Boulevard in the vicinity of the new residential developments on Ocean Ave. It is the understanding of the City Council that the management of the buildings charges its residents a monthly fee to park on site. Residents avoid paying the additional cost by parking on the public way, reducing traffic flow to one lane on Ocean Ave, and eliminating parking for visitors to Revere Beach. The current regulations, which are 4-hour parking in place, are not enforced by the state police or DCR.
Thank you. This is a big problem we didn't see coming, but we have these developers now that are coming into the city and charging $100 for a space inside their units, and people do not want to pay after paying $2,500 for one bedroom or $3,300 for two bedroom. They don't want to pay that extra $100. I see it in Beachmont all the time. People do not want to pay $5 to park in a parking lot. They'll park on the street. This has become a problem on Ocean Ave. It's narrowed Ocean Ave down to one lane. So I would like to, before it gets bigger, I'd like to stop it, and I'll say, you know, if the developers are gonna charge for parking, I would say, include it in your rent. Include it in your rent. Stop parking on the side, the streets. And I'm gonna give it up to Councilor Novoselsky to talk about this, and then Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. It is a bad situation that has turned out on Ocean Ave, especially down in the area with 650, 660, 674. Not only are they parking there, but now when it rains real hard, they're underwater because they haven't done that mitigation on the county ditch behind those buildings. So there is a very bad situation there. We have told people through site plan review and the mayor's office that we don't want people to have separate pay, that we would prefer it be built into their lease. So this way they would be parking inside and they would be almost forced to be paying for it. Now, I understand that the new proposed facility at the Yankees have said they're not gonna charge extra total separately. It will be built into the lease, so the people will be allowed to park in the building for those short number of spaces that they have available. You know, they're not meeting the total requirements, that's why they're asking for variances, which they did not get, but they have other avenues that they can work on that. But I would say that we should enforce our feelings to the mayor's office and to our development. I don't think we can do much with the north lot and the developments down there, that's down their buildings, because all those agreements were made 10, 12 years ago. So we're kind of stuck with those, I would believe. But anything new, I think we can enforce and implement something where there is no additional payment for parking in their facilities, so they don't have to go on our streets, no matter where it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. Councilor Powers?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I agree with Councilor Novoselsky 100%. I think he makes a good point. I think this is perhaps something that could be written into the special permit, or whatever considerations they did receive. But I think also to do this, you have to have the required number of spaces in that particular project. You can't say that, we're going to have 200 apartments and we're going to have 100 parking spaces, and those 100 people are going to have to pay X amount of dollars per month, and well, what about the other 100 people you don't have parking for? Where do they go? Good question. I think it's an important question. Revere Beach is billed and has been billed for over 100 years as America's first public beach. And there has been so much resistance over the year by former commissioners at the DCR not to charge for parking down there, to have free parking. And the reason they insisted on that was, again, it's America's first public beach. So if we're building units, there needs to be parking for each one of those units in those buildings, so that we're not forcing those people out on the street, and we're not taking up spaces where not just residents from out of the city, but people live up in Ward 4, people live up in Ward 6, people live in Ward 3. They want to drive down to the beach and park. There should be spaces available to them. And that's not going to be happening if certain things happen in this city. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. Councilor Guanasso?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Earlier this evening, we got some discouraging reminder from the general partner of Baystone Revere LLC, the general partner of Beach House. He stated to us that his units are going to be rented without provision for parking, meaning that that would be an addition to. So that means the folks down at 510 Revere Beach Boulevard and 500 Revere Beach Boulevard are no longer going to have any spaces available in front of their properties. This is completely going to be wiped out. Human nature is that people will reserve their funds as best they could. And a lot of young people that might be able to afford the rent that Beach House is going to offer out, they will supplement their properties by not paying for additionally for the parking, and they will definitely park on the beach. There's no question in my mind. So we have to be very careful of what we get. And unfortunately, that's, if my vision was correct, and I had any prior knowledge to that statement, never in a million years would I have voted for that. I thought they came in with a good concept. I thought that, and my firm belief is, and it still is, that Revere Beach has to be developed, and it has to be developed with condominiums and units. That's what residential property should be. That's the best and most efficient way. Mixed use would be the best way to conduct the rest of Revere Beach. My opinion, limited opinion. You see all the very pricey areas throughout the country. condominiums and units and mixed use, mixed in with some commercial businesses, are all on the beachfront. That's where they ought to be. That's where the most glamorous part of your community is. And we were taken by surprise, and I was taken by Mr. McDonald's statement tonight that definitely that is not part of their proposal down there. And that's what we agreed on. And so we're going to be stuck with I can just see it now. Just go down there as construction's ongoing. They must have 50 cars that are working on the property there, and they're all on the beach. They're all on Revere Beach Boulevard. So folks are going to be very angry. And I think that what we have to do is be mindful of when we vote for these particular places, and hopefully we'll get the understanding from developers not to put little pull-over fast ones on us by allowing this type of thing to happen. You know, more often than not, when you see a proposal before you in previous years, and it's only been recently, and I know we got stuck with the Ocean Avenue project because that was stuck with us years ago. And unfortunately, Joe DeGangi and his group, they subleased everything else. So we were getting parcels of land and all different types of things occurring there. We never did get the hotel first. We all got the residential and shoddy at best, with the exception of 650. This is the things we've got to watch for. And this here is very alarming to me, and I think that whole end of Revere Beach is going to be wiped out, no question in my mind. Come this summer, the first warm day, there's going to be no residents from any part of the community going to visit Revere Beach there. There'll be no parking available, all be residential. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. Councilor Keefe.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. This is a good motion. I think next council meeting, I'll be offering us another motion similar to closing that loophole for proposed new units in the city, that if there is parking included in their permitting, that it is parking that's not at an additional cost. But I will say, so that was a loophole that these companies in the past have obviously, we talked about this before, gotten over on us, unbeknownst to the council, where they had the appropriate number of parking spaces to the units that they were building, and they were approved based on that. But then they're going ahead and charging. And that's exactly why tonight I voted against their signage. It wasn't because I didn't think their sign was going to be nice. It was because if we have any leverage, we should utilize that. So if they come to us in the future, and I was disappointed that no one else supported me in that, but that's okay. If they come to us in the future for special permits or additions to their spaces or renovations or something that they wanted to do in addition to their property, we have no real leverage now because their properties were already approved. But when they come for extras, we have to negotiate. We have to find some way to negotiate in order to maybe get something back. People rent apartments, and if they have pets, they pay more. If they have extra space in their apartments, they pay more. If they have storage in the garage area, they pay more. It's in their rent. There's no reason, and you get it or you don't. So if they go and rent it and they want parking, it should be included in their rent. But again, that would be probably for a motion I'll be happy to submit for next council meeting. I think this is a good motion. Thank you. But we have to hold some leverage next time that they come to us looking for extra signage. If they pulled one over on us, whether we knew it or not, we have to use the leverage today in order to try and get that back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Keefe. Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. My understanding is that these parking spaces are for rent, and therefore they are commercial product. My understanding is if that is the case, and I would suggest that we speak to the city solicitor, as it is a commercial product, that they have to get a license for it. I don't believe they have a license for it. So if they don't have a license for it, there's two things that I think we need to remedy. Number one, I spoke to Councilor Powers about this earlier, is that we need to start increasing the fee for commercial parking spaces. As this is not part and parcel of their residential product, it is clear to me that they're utilizing it as a commercial product, because it doesn't say that I can't go and rent it. I didn't hear that from that gentleman when Councilor Keefe asked him, so therefore it's my presumption that it's a commercial product and that there's no reason for us not to ask him for a fee. Very much what they do in Boston. You know, many people have condominiums there, and you can buy a parking spot for upwards of $100,000, or you can rent one for upwards of $1,000 down on Newberry Street or where have you per month. As crazy as that is a price. So I suggest that we request the city solicitor to look into this and find out if they are actually doing this as a commercial venue. If so, that we need to now ask them to come before the council for a license and deal with them in that fashion. More importantly, I think at this point we need to start changing the cost in order to obtain a parking space within the city of Revere for a license as a commercial rental. And I hope that you will all join me in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilor Rotundo makes a good point. When we authorize a building to be built, whether they're going to charge for the parking or not charge for it, they should have the required number of spaces to satisfy the apartments in that building. And I don't think it's a bad thing for people to have to pay to park in a building. That should all be factored in with the developer who's building the building. If he's building 100 units, well, he's got to put 100 parking spaces in there, and that's part of the cost of building the building. And that's also part of the cost of, if it's condominium, selling the condo, or the rental charge. I know parking is at a premium. I know at the Bremer Street Garage in Boston, a couple of years ago, they were getting $100,000 for a parking space in there. $150,000, and people were willing to pay it. It's all part of the game. It's all part of the equation. So I think the main thing we need to do is make sure that there are enough parking spaces in that building to satisfy the occupancy of the building, and also visitor spaces. Very important. If you're required to have one parking space for a one-bedroom condominium, let's say, and you want to have your friend Charlie come over to play cards or spend the evening. What's that, Arthur?
No, Charlie's saying, okay.
Have a drink.
Then I didn't mean you, Charlie, I'm sorry. When I said cards, I meant someone else. But, no, it's important that there be so many visitor spaces in these buildings also. Very important.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice President. Shame on us. You know, we just let this building build almost 400 apartments. And this guy comes up here tonight and tells us, we always intended to charge for parking. It was a concept I never saw coming. And shame on all of us for letting that happen. Never again.
No, not again.
We ever permit another building, there's got to be some kind of way to force them to have first of all, have the parking they need. Second of all, it's got to be part of the rent, because we're not putting these cars on the street. It's just absurd. So I feel I've been taken advantage of here, so let's hope we don't let this happen again.
Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. Councilor Rotundo?
Hey, I want to make a point, and this is going to sound a little, I don't know, buttery. You know, there are certain developers that we deal with, and I know with a handshake and a word, you can fall asleep and know that this person's going to come through. Jamie Russo, Matt Philbin, several others. You know, they give you your word. You know that they're going to keep their word regardless. No matter how bad it is on their side of the equation. They're going to keep their word. This is a guy who come up here and, quote, gave us his word. His word is no good, period. So unless you fall into a certain category of trusted and true, you're going to get really scrutinized by me as a zoning chairman. So let me tell you right now, if you're coming up here for permits and you're a new developer in the city, you're going to be scrutinized beyond belief. Get ready.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Just to, point of information for Councilor Zambudo, they are towing down that area at 10 o'clock, after 10 o'clock, so just for your information.
They are towing.
Yeah, they are towing. Okay, so, all in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
One late motion presented by Councilor Rizzo, that the mayor and the chief of the fire department appear before the city council to discuss staffing of both personnel and equipment at the Riviera Fire Department. This motion is prompted by the devastating fire at 81 Central Ave that damaged 2 other neighboring houses. A pump was out of service at Central Fire, which could have drastically reduced response time and have been a significant factor with regards to life safety.
So, thank you. So, Councilor Zambudo? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I think there should be a system that we should always know when an emergency piece is out of service. I mean, there should be at least a backup at all times in the particular station. We should never have a dead pump in a firehouse. I'm baffled by this, and it's frightening to hear this, that something that important is out of service, and I was shocked when I read this motion, so I'm stunned, and we need some accountability here, and we need some sort of, I'm not pointing any fingers, I think there needs to be a system in place that, God forbid, we got a piece of equipment that's out of service, we need to get a piece of equipment if we have to rent it or borrow it or whatever, but we should never be left unprotected like that, if that's what happened.
Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. Councilor Rotundo?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm sure there's an explanation of it. I understand that's how, to Councilor Zambudo's commentary about having a backup, I believe that's what mutual aid is. My understanding is that Chelsea came in with a pump and helped with this process. I would like to have the chief come up here and educate us about the process and give us a better understanding of what took place and how the process actually works, and move forward from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Councilor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. It's my understanding we do have a backup in the system. And now, I don't know, it may not have been at Central at the time. It may have been someplace else, but we do have a backup. I know we have a backup. Now, I have a lot of faith in Chief Bright, and he wouldn't leave this city short-staffed, or short-handed, in a case like this. Now, I know Chelsea came in, Everett came in, Boston came in. They have mutual aid, especially for the size of a fire like this, a conflagration like this. So, I don't know what Councilor Rizzo heard on this thing, but, I'm interested in finding out what's going on. But, it just doesn't seem plausible that Chief Bright would let us be shortchanged.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zambudo?
Thanks for the latitude. Listen, the fire department did a marvelous job here, and they saved somebody's life that it came close, and that was my rant there, was nothing in any way disparaging the chief or his men. I'm told we're short manpower, is what the problem was here, and it shouldn't be a money issue. I don't think so, but there's something going on here that we're short manpower, and that's what we gotta find out about. But in no way I want anybody to take anything except admiration for the wonderful job men and women did to save lives here. They knocked that fire. That was a bad fire that went quickly, and they did a marvelous job. But if we need to help with manpower, we gotta find out what's going on here. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. Councilor Keefe?
Thank you. I don't have a lot to add to this, except for I do feel the fire department did a terrific job. There were no lives People got out of the house safely, and it was a tough fire. It was in an attic. It's an older house. They go up quick. But I will say that I happen to know some of the people that live in there, and it's across the street from my ward. I did post on my Facebook page, the GoFundMe page. There's going to be some fundraising going along to try and help this family get something to help them along. They lost a lot, so if you visit my Facebook page, you can probably help out if you'd like. That's all.
Thank you, Council Chief. Councilor Powers?
Thank you, Madam President. I talked with Chief Bright earlier today, and I believe it was an indication that it was a manpower problem. They were short-staffed at that particular point. My understanding is, though, that as they always do, the Revere Fire Department worked effectively and efficiently to knock down that fire. And if it's something like, if it had been in Beachmont or something like that, your area, you've got engine 56 right over in the Heights. They can always bring that right in.
Right.
It's probably just as accessible as engine 1 down in the Parkway.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. This conclude, all in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
No further business.
This concludes the meeting of February 5th. There's no further business. Our next regular meeting will be February 26th at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much.
February 26th.
That was very difficult. Really?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Let's hear it. You did well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I was very nervous.
That's all you had to do. You couldn't even tell. Couldn't even tell.
Really?
Yeah.
No. I wouldn't want this. I like
You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Really, thanks a lot. Going to get something to eat or no?
Yeah, I am.
I'm gonna go down. Can you give me a ride?
I would love to.
Okay. Thanks.
Hey, listen, you girls, if you ever want to get a nice meal, if you like fish, because Lent is coming, go over to Winthrop Farms, and they have a new piece of haddock with basil, garlic, oil, and